And we are live. Hello, everyone. Welcome
What's
to
up,
another
guys?
Saturday episode of the Noise Floor. We have the usual stooges here. I sadly didn't come up with fun names for them this time. That's my bad. I am on several hours of sleep and probably hungover, as we've concluded. I don't know what the cause is of.
Apparently, Blaine's trying to get in and he can't.
Oh, is he? Okay. All right, let's
Yeah.
do that. So, we do have a show for you guys today about the dark side of the audio. Is it the dark side of the audio industry?
I think it's the dark side of audio as a
The
hobby
dark,
more
the
so,
dark.
but we
Yeah,
can get
yeah,
into
yeah.
the dark side of the
That's
industry if
part
you
of it,
guys want.
right? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
we
yeah,
should
yeah.
we should talk about as many dark
Okay,
sides as we can.
yeah. As you guys could tell from the thumbnail, are we the dark side? We'll get into
Yes,
I
it.
think in some ways, yeah, definitely.
We're the Sith.
we're definitely the unfun side.
Yeah,
That's just
I'm not
true.
necessarily sure I would call us
False
the
narrative.
Sith, but
Okay,
What do you mean it's a false narrative?
because we love fun here. We're all about fun. I have a playlist that I made that's all about fun. All right.
anyway.
So before we get started, a bit of housekeeping. I don't know. Are you guys going to do after this show the thing you did last time, where you go into stage on Discord?
Maybe for a bit.
Okay.
I did really enjoy it last time. So for those who
I
aren't
enjoyed it as
aware of what Andrew's talking about, we did a little bit of a shorter stream last time and then opted to move the chat to our Discord server, which you can, I think, find linked in the description. If not, I'll go ahead and add a. Yeah, no, it's linked in the description. And we chatted there for like hours and hours. So I'm not making any promises that that's going to happen again, but we are probably going to make these streams a little bit shorter on the YouTube platform and opt to move a lot of the conversation that isn't as topical or structured to Discord. So if you guys want to be a part of that, go ahead and join our Discord server, and we'll see you there after this is over.
Last time we got deep into philosophy.
You say we. It was you and Blaine.
Right. But that also meant that we don't need to have it for the stream because it can go there.
That's true. Yeah, we're gonna dump all of the philosophy nerd.
It also got me to bring out my book. I've been rereading this inquiry. Okay, yeah, that can happen later. Treasures from a lost age. So before we get going here, just a couple things. If you guys want your questions or topics to be featured on the podcast here, we do have a forum thread where you guys can contribute, and we definitely need your guys' help because we're running dry on topics. Also, the forum in general, there's a lot of really good discussion going on there lately. So big shout outs to the folks in the forum, folks like Luke, folks like I can't remember the other. Michael, I think, is the other one I've seen recently. So really good stuff there. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Zercult. Yeah, very, very good stuff there. Fun discussion, all about driver story, whether technicalities matters, that kind of stuff, frequency response, etc. The stuff that we like to talk about here too. So, so that's number one. Number two, what's number two? We have a Discord. Join the Discord.
Discord.gg/headphones.
Yep. And then, of course, remember to support headphones.com if you like what we're doing here. You can subscribe to the channel here, but also headphones.com has a ridiculous 365-day return policy for many of the things there. There's part of that sort of ideology was you can't always try everything. And we want to make sure that folks have a great experience with the thing that they get. And if it's not the right thing for them, they can return it for something else. What else?
Headphones.com does not just stock headphones, but also speakers, DACs, amps, cables, and we have a limited selection on headphones.ca for people who want to buy in Canada.
Yeah. The other big thing,
love Blaine just subtly not mentioning IEMs.
I didn't even notice that.
Why would I mention
doesn't
IEMs?
even exist in his brain. God bless him.
The other thing I wanted to mention just about headphones.com generally is that we don't talk about this really enough, but um, we are never told what to say. There's no expectation of, positive sentiment when we review products. We're able to speak freely about whatever we want here. Um, there's a deep commitment to ensuring there's editorial integrity. And so, like the last video that I did was a particularly negative review of the Sandara Closed, and there was no backlash. And so, quite frankly, if it wasn't for headphones.com support, we wouldn't be doing these videos. And with that out of the way, I think we can get into the stream. Topic number 1 is why
let me yeah, I'll
okay.
kind of
Okay.
get into it. So
yeah, you're muscling in on Griffin's territory.
Okay.
It's not my territory. It's just so this was an idea I had and wanted to talk about, and it's a little bit of a mushy topic that I'm not sure exactly where it's going to go. But kind of the unspoken about dark side of this hobby is that whether people choose to kind of keep themselves in the dark about the data side of this hobby, so they choose to ignore measurements, are suspicious of anyone that uses them, etc., or are the people that tend to know less than they think they do, in that they'll pay too much attention to the measurements, put too much faith in them, and overstate, I think, their ability to predict a lot of the things about someone's experience or even their own experience. There's an under-discussed overconfidence that I think makes every part of this hobby worse, regardless of which camp you fall into.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I'm not sure what it is about this hobby that invites that, but it is interesting.
Well, lack of a one number answer. And the attempt to find it.
I think there's a lot of there's a confluence of factors, I would say, and I would like to open up the floor to discussion here because
great.
I have a few ideas. But...
Yeah, no, I'd love to talk about Frank Jackson. This is a great opportunity.
Yeah.
But like, if you look
Didn't we get this out of our systems on Discord? We spent like 6 hours talking about this.
Not Frank Jackson.
If you look at the PC hobby, though, like that one is, for the most part, which one's got highest FPS? Which monitor has the best
frame time?
Which monitor's got
contrast? Frame time, contrast.
Yeah.
There are other factors.
But regardless of what thing you're picking, for the most part, there's single number answers, and it's generally a case of higher is better, whatever. But the disagreements come in as to which of those you prioritize. Do you want a higher refresh rate on a TN panel with terrible colors, or do you want, an OLED or IPS or something that might have poorer response time or something?
In audio, for a very boomer moment, I don't think they've made TNs for like 10 years now.
TNs.
They still make TNs.
Really?
I have not seen a TN panel introduced into the market.
Someone, I can't remember who it was. Someone put out like 1,000 hertz TN panel or something at CES.
Yeah. What?
Yep. Okay. Yeah, they absolutely still make TNs. But then in audio, you don't get that. There's been attempts to sort of describe one, be it things like SINAD or, predictive preference rating or something. But for the most part,
people treat it that way. People treat it as like, higher number better. We talked about this in the previous live stream about, single metric kind of stuff.
And what I find interesting is that within audio, there's a lot of attempts to kind of try to do that. Even in some cases, taking something which is prescribed as good, like an amp being class A, and people then just universally treating class A amp better, even if it's like demonstrably terrible or something. There's a lot of people that are seeking an easy answer and almost refusing to treat it as the pretty complex experience that it is.
I tend to think that there's also an element of like so much of this is also just preference for how people want to use the things or engage with the things like that they might be buying, to the point where like some of it makes literally zero sense. Like, why would people ever go back to using tapes? And yet we know people who are perfectly willing to do that. There you go, right? So it's like we have this amazing stuff here, but there's a preference for using things that might be, inferior in so many ways, but people will still do it, right? And you could take that same argument to things like tube amplifiers. There's, or even, you can go one step further and talk about vinyl, right? The way that people actually use these things, because goodness is not as simple as, this translates to better performance in X or Y way, the way that it might in other areas, right? We're not just talking about horsepower here. We're
Well, yeah,
talking
but
about
people
preference
still
for
use
how people want to
CRTs
use.
also.
Yeah, but which is
Like
bizarre to
CRT
me. But
band isn't well. I mean, there are areas where CRTs are better, very niche areas, but they exist. And I think that that's probably, but it's largely nostalgia, right? And I think
yeah,
that it's very similar for tubes and vinyl.
do you think that that there's the same kind, like, I don't know. I feel like
Hang
with,
on. I don't think that it's necessarily just that with tubes and vinyl, though, because whilst they are objectively inferior, some of the ways in which they are
yeah,
objectively inferior are then, for some people, subjectively preferable. Like,
I
that's
mean,
what I
I
was gonna
like
that's
say.
listening
like
to
Yeah,
tube amps,
they're not just
not
using it for
because they
nostalgia
are
reasons.
yeah, I have no nostalgia for tube amps or anything like that, but I like listening to tube amps because they do change the sound. They are objectively worse with much higher distortion to such an audible extent that it makes it a subjective improvement for certain situations.
I mean, you can make
Yeah,
a similar argument about CRTs, right? There's that whole thing about how pixel art looks better with CRT blur because the
Mm,
CRT, the photon hitting, or yeah, the electron hitting the fucking phosphor flares a
yeah.
little bit, and so if you have just a straight CR, like a digital image which is meant for a CRT, it'll look very jagged on a better objectively display, but it looks worse. So there's an analog there, I suppose.
pun intended.
I think like because we've discussed the question of objective versus subjective before, though, but this one the question is what causes people to be overconfident, which is interesting because I mean, well, if, for anyone listening, go and watch the myths about measurements video if you haven't seen it already. But like, there's a lot of people in audio that I would say are not just they are not just willing to be confidently incorrect about something, but seeming the goal for them is to stay in a position,
It's
not
a
to actually
well,
look for an answer.
that's exactly it. It's for so many people, they've learned a little bit of a thing, but the fact that they learned that was enough to make it so that they build their worldview around it. And I say this to both camps, right? Both the measurements side of things and also the people, talking about, decay, right? Like using whatever lexicon that you've built yourself up to understand these products in terms of, and you're able to communicate this with other people who also have that sort of shared language. That's one sort of thing that you have now anchored your expectation of good and bad to. That's a little bit of sort of community knowledge, I would say, that you've learned, and that's how people then will they'll confidently ground their worldview when it comes to audio in terms of this kind of stuff. On the flip side, you have people who they've just barely scratched the surface when it comes to measurements. They understand that raw graphs, the difference between raw and compensated, for example, or they understand measurement relative to Harman. That even headphones can be measured, right? The frequency response is a thing, and then that's the thing. That's the only thing. That's where basically their learning stops and their confidence begins. you know, and I see it so commonly that, like, okay, you know, if we just talked a little bit more about this, if we would get to a much deeper and much better understanding about what's actually going on here on both accounts. But people they seemingly aren't willing to go past what they've already built themselves up to understand in these two camps. And that's not to say that we necessarily understand everything either, right? Like, for me, I can
There
point this
isn't a
lens at
person
myself.
that does
No,
understand
no, and
it's
I,
not.
yeah, no, I can point this lens at myself. I can look back. Thankfully, there's a history of videos from me on this channel, right? Like, where I can look back at the things that I built myself up to understand over time, and how that's changed so dramatically. When I see people, and this is particular with with regards to the folks on Headfi, right? And since some of the commentary that people provide there, I I remember when I was there, like,
Yeah.
and like I can see it, right? And it's like you just need to go a little further, and then you can see where there's actually a better explanation for for what where you're trying to go with this or whatever it is, right? Same thing with the graph stuff. So
Yeah,
that's kind of where I'm at with it.
the Headphone setup, I think, is really quite bad for this, because the problem with Headphone I see, and one of the reasons why I'm not typically so involved in Headphone nowadays, unless someone's tagging me to ask a question or something, is that you end up with a lot of individual threads, typically product focused, in which basically everyone praises that product. And if you say anything negative about it, then you're not just like outcast, but you are wrong, and people will find reasons to believe that you are wrong. But then you go into another products thread,
Oh,
and
you're not just
all
wrong.
of the
You are
grouping
everything
opinions
you
are,
said is lacks credibility because of
yes,
what you said about this one thing.
like it's a collection of sort of micro groups and forums, and there's no real like understanding or growth of understanding going on, which is quite frustrating. But it's also really just, I think, a little bit not great for actually finding product advice, regardless of objective understanding or learning or anything like that. Just because you go into any thread and say, does it sound good for whatever reason? I don't care about the why. I just want to know, does it sound good? And everyone will tell you, yes, this is the best. And if you listen to anyone on any other thread, they're all idiots. Just ignore them. Then you go into the competing product that everyone in thread A said was terrible, and they go, no, everything on thread A, they're all idiots. This is the one that you want. This one's great. And it's just that over and over again.
I forget if it was Mark, like from Super, who said this, but I'm going to attribute it to Super anyways. So you're taking the blame. No, it was something along the lines of like, folks are never upset with your review practices when you have something positive to say.
That's
It's
not true.
always
I
I was
okay.
gonna say,
Well,
to be honest,
you
I've
would be.
not
I'm
found that to
saying
be
people
true,
on
but
people on Headfi is what I'm talking about. Blaine, of course, is upset with everybody's review practices.
I'm more
well,
upset usually with positive reviews than with negative, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Same.
But no, I'm talking specifically in those
yeah, but
threads.
you're
You don't
Blaine.
see the, like if you put out a review, if somebody were to put out review that included data, for example, where the measurements were done incorrectly, but it made it where it showed the product to look really good, right? Or when I say incorrectly, like say it was like the measurements taken on one rig, but then the target was a completely different one. Say it was like an incompatible target with the rig, but it made it look really good. You would never see people in those threads criticizing the review practice. At least I haven't seen it, because it
I
supports
think
the
maybe that's a little bit extreme. Like
Have you seen it?
I have seen that to some extent. Like there are
Like,
people who
I
are
know we've
inclined
done it.
to
I've done it. Like,
actually. I mean, the
I've
thing
called
is,
people
we
out for
are
that.
part of this community too. Like, we can't
Yeah.
just create this straw man where anyone who's as reasonable as we are isn't part of the dark side. Like, the dark side is something that exists within all of us, and it's really just sort of a sense of tying your own identity to product. I mean, like, that is
Mm.
basically the core of it. Like, I
And
make
also
fun of
it's
this
fair to
on
say
the
Well,
that,
product and brand too, right? People
Well,
tie
sure.
that
we've
into
had our
yeah.
communication issues absolutely as well. Like we're not saying that we're doing everything right. Yeah, no, we've had, I think, particularly some of the issues that we've had have not there have been things which I'm sure we've said which are just outright wrong or whatever, but like part of the issue, I think, or the most common issue, is when what people are understanding what we've said, or what a video was taken to mean, was not the intended meaning of that video or statement at all. That's happened a few times, I think.
I'd like
So-
that to be on the record. Anytime that people interpret our videos as meaning something which is bad or negative, it's your fault. We were right. It was you
So true.
who
That's
interpreted
not
it
what I'm
wrong.
saying.
So true.
That's a good example, but yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one thing actually, which I would say is a problem with not just audio, but one of the reasons why this is a problem in audio is that rather than complaining or making constructive criticism to people, a lot of the time people will just go and complain elsewhere. Like if we said something wrong, people wouldn't comment or message us and say like, "Hey, I think that you probably could have done this better. Maybe next time try including this or clarifying this or something." They'll just go on Headphone and say, "No, those Headphone Show guys are idiots. They think this," and like, we weren't even. There's been things which like I didn't even know people thought until I just happened across a statement on it somewhere completely irrelevant. It's like
This
if you
happened to
just
me
meant it,
recently.
you could have
Th- th-
clarified
This
it in a second.
this happened to me recently where somebody was critical of my take on the HD660S in a video on the
Right.
660S too, I think, and it was like very highly upvoted, and the comment said something along the lines of like, uh, in a review that you published back in 2020 or whatever year it was, yeah, I think it was 2020, you said that the HD660S was your favorite of the HD6 series headphones, and until you change, uh, and it's fine to change your mind, but if that statement is still up, you lose a lot of credibility. There's something like that, right? And I was like, I remember like thinking positively erroneously about that headphone in the past, but I don't remember that specific statement. So I wanted to check out what that review actually was. I wanted to check out, what I'd actually said. Then I went to the review, and I didn't even write the review. It was a review from Chrono.
Oh.
So it says written by Chrono. It's like, and that's
I
not that
think
they're
that might
shade at
be an
Chrono, but
error
I was like,
with the way the site works.
it was an error with the way that the
because-
site published
We
the
have,
review.
Yeah,
we have
yeah.
had this happen before.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
the fact that I took strays and it hits to my credibility with high visibility to in that video, what it was sort of like, it was sort of weird to me that people that I had to specifically search for that to understand what was going on, right? Nobody had come up to me and actually said this to me, personally. Nobody had actually brought this to my attention, so I didn't even know that that was the case.
So to this point, a component about why people are overconfident is because people aren't having their errors displayed to them as clearly as they could.
Okay, we have someone in chat.
Jack, in a video, I did say that. So this was my point. I thought that I said something like that, and that's why I wanted to get to the bottom of it. But the specific statement in question that they were referring to was not one that should have been attributed to me, right? So I'm perfectly happy to be wrong about it, and to say, yeah, my opinion changed and that I was wrong about it at the time. I actually know why I was wrong about that particular one, and it's because of worn pads. If you're comparing a 660S with fresh pads against a 650 with warm pads, worn pads, the worn pads can make things sound quite dark on those headphones. Listener might still prefer them, but I didn't at the time. When you compare with fresh pads, it's a very clear, difference, and I had a clear preference after doing that much bigger comparison with fresh pads.
Or another issue is also that there are some people who just straight up are not intending in audio to try and find either real answers or give real advice. Their primary goal is basically to either attract attention or make themselves look good, including involving, for certain people, I would say, knowingly and maliciously doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I feel
that's-
like those people are few and far between and probably don't really even merit
Yeah, I don't think there's
discussion
any, like,
because most reasonable
major
people
but-
know that they're not to be paid attention to anyway. I do actually think the very first thing you said, Cameron, was probably where I would probably start my thought process on this, which is that in the absence of like actual understanding, and I don't mean like people not digging deep enough into the science or whatever. It's if you dig deep into the science, you don't get answers, you get more questions. And I
Yeah.
think in the absence of answers, there isn't really much of a space to be confident in an answer. Like you can only be like overconfident in many ways. If you think you have an idea of what you're talking about and are not properly leaving enough space for you to be incorrect, which is the space where even most of us either have been at one point or still are currently. But I also think there's Josh in chat asked, is there such thing as an unconfident audiophile? And I think there probably are. It's just mostly the people that haven't dove in, been exposed to one very confident person and formed or taken a narrative from them and made it their own.
Well, I would
It's
say
definitely-
even outside of these communities, if you just talk like the much more commonplace, like not always online folks still seem to have overconfidence when it comes to audio because they've talked to someone who they feel knows about this stuff,
Yeah.
who has spoken with authority about it, right? It's an authority
mean-
driving space, which is
In part.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
that I vibe with this take. Like, you're treating it like it's a communicable illness, this overconfidence. But I feel like people
I
I
think it
feel like
is.
people come to this by themselves. Like, I think that if you leave people to their own devices, people will form these weird
No, I
kind
think
of
that's I think both of those things can be true, right? I think like, and I'm speaking, of course, this is anecdotally from like the people who I've encountered who will I'm thinking of a specific example right now where somebody was like so brand pilled about Sennheiser that they would, and it was like they just spoke with such confidence and authority about a Sennheiser, but like clearly didn't understand anything to do with what, with audio or with any of this stuff, right? Um, and that came from what they had heard from somebody else who was talking with authority about it, and so now they are talking with authority about it. So I mean, I don't think that makes it so that people can't just arrive there just because of the experiences that they've had. I think that's certainly true.
Yeah.
And that does
I
get
was just
to-
saying that the dichotomy of like, confident in or overconfident implies there is a confident and underconfident. But I think overconfident is the most common because
well, I'll get
there's very few ways to be confident once you've actually been in this community and learned even a little bit, because there's
The overconfident ones are the vocal ones as well. I
Yeah.
think realistically,
well, no, not
most people get
necessarily
into the-
actually. I think
I don't-
I actually just think most
mean, just-
audiophiles are overconfident, but that's because no matter which avenue you go
Yeah.
down in terms of which kind of type of, whether it's the experiential or the kind of more measurement focused stuff, vibes more with your sensibility, both of those have so much mushiness and uncertainty that to speak about them at all without mentioning the, like, once
it guarantees
kind of
overconfidence.
obvious
Yeah.
problems there with either of them, you are just kind of overconfident, at least in what
You're going
saying.
to be like by
Yeah.
dint of talking about it, it's going to be in the spirit of, or in a overconfident manner, and certainly we fall afoul of that,
Absolutely.
regularly, because these are the
Yes.
and this goes to something I was talking about. I can't remember if it was last stream or the stream before, but like I mentioned this on the forum that like the things that we talk about with respect to, for example, frequency response to the eardrum, HRTF variation, or not HRTF variation, HPTF variation, sorry. All this kind of stuff is still conjecture. But at the same time, the more you get into this, the more you test certain things that you thought were true, and you find out that, okay, maybe they're not true, or they're not fully true. And you then get to certain foundational agreement with other people who've gone through those same exercises. And I don't think we could ever expect everybody to have done that. I mean, I'm thinking of all these like how many people are doing, but forget manual tone generation sweeps and stuff like that. How many people are doing EQ to begin with? Like overwhelmingly not. Overwhelmingly not. And I feel like when people are diving into EQ, that's probably the first step to realizing that some of these and not just like applying a profile. I'm talking about like trying to get EQ to be like personalized for you, and making these adjustments. That's probably the first step in realizing some of these assumptions that you may have had about certain things are either wrong or not fully true.
Yeah. I guess the thing is, just as you learn more, those pitfalls don't go away, and you only get more and more pitfalls to be overconfident about. Like,
Yeah.
I was helping, so there was someone in Mark's server this morning, and I was helping them kind of generate an EQ profile, and it started from a place where like they recommended a tool for auto EQ, and then they did that and they weren't happy with it, and like obviously the people in this call understand why there are pitfalls with EQ, auto EQ, that would lead
Yeah.
to someone not being happy with the result. And then so I got in there, I asked what headphone they're using, and what kind of sound they're going for, what kind of complaints they have. And I realized that the more complete my information was trying to help them, the more things that could go wrong. Like if you're not considering, for example, the fact that they were using a single driver IEM that had a very big dip in the treble
Yeah.
at a certain spot where that dip just might not show up, or it'll shift, or there's enough uncertainty to things that I think a lot of people reasonably think should be simple, like just EQing their IEM to sound better. But it's really tough that as soon as you learn a little bit, you are automatically in the overconfident space, and
Yeah.
you're only going to get more overconfident
Yeah,
as time goes on, unless you learn to disclaim your things
Yeah.
and manage expectations as best as you can.
And this is what I was saying. It's like a little bit of information. It does enough to sort of damage your ability to acquire more.
Yeah, that's
I mean, we see it
a
like
fun
everywhere.
way
We
to put
see
it.
we see it on science forums. We see it
Yeah.
on Headphone. We see it in YouTube, like everywhere.
When you say science forums, I presume you mean audio science, because I can't imagine that we're members of many actual science forums.
I didn't mean. Yeah,
God,
this is
no.
fair. I meant specifically like ASR in our space, but I imagine you would see it in other science forums as well. It's not I'm not saying this is unique to audio, but there is something unique about audio that does this to people.
Well, I think the thing about audio, I don't actually think it's unique. Like, I think you see analogs to this again in like the monitors thing. I acutely remember. Well, I mean, as I said, we were talking about CRTs and shit, and there are still people who are on the whole, oh, I'll never use a non-CRT monitor because something, the black periods between the frames yields a higher, perceived contrast or whatever, not contrast in terms of like brightness, but it's the whole black frame insertion thing that they were trying to do with monitors, all that bullshit. There's a whole community in a lot of different things, and a lot of it is stuff that's sort of sensorially connected. I'd say you see it with cars as well. There are people who are ardent fanboys of certain cars or certain manufacturers. Again, basically because of, in large part, relatively ineffable things. Like handling on a car is obviously quantifiable, but it's also a very subjective experience, and it's something people get very.
There's entire communities dedicated to the little bump on the back of the Mazda Miata. The little swoop for certain model years. And the ones after that don't have that, they're terrible, but the ones that have it, they're great.
So no, I think some of it's just sort of the sunk cost thing, right? Like
totally.
Consumer hobbies of all sorts, the expensive ones, do pull people into this sort of thing. Audio just also
saying something is a driver's car is literally as useful as saying that a headphone is musical.
Those I hope it's a driver's car. I need to drive them.
Yeah, as opposed to a pilot's car, or a headphone that just plays.
It's a cyclist's car.
Cyclist's car.
That's what Douglas wants. He wants that weird 3-wheel thing.
The Aptera or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that thing looks horrible.
The Cybertruck is the least cyclist friendly car, I believe. But
yeah,
I
keep seeing those.
Someone got one seized in the UK because they're not allowed in the UK, and they imported one and immediately got it seized.
Mark Ryan is mentioning a very fun video, which is a Mazda employee. I think it was actually one of the original designers of the Miata commenting on Miata mods.
Oh yeah.
That one, I would love to see something like that, but for audio, because we have a lot of similar abominations in our space.
It's everything that Custom Cans does.
Shout out to Custom Cans. This is our negative shout out. Everyone go there and spit on them.
Come on, guys. He means
Sorry. No. I will amend that, and I will apologize. It's everything that he's done to the HD6 series of headphones.
Yeah.
Specifically.
Apparently
I'm not familiar enough with this game to make comments on anything else.
Yeah.
But
no, apparently his foam mod for the Sandara Closed was beneficial to people. They in the comments, they seem to like it.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay,
so the reason I amend that happily
ears. I have no idea.
The reason I amend this happily is because the HD 600 or 650 or whatever is one where I can verify it's pretty decent before he does any tinkering, and the direction he takes things is one that I think most people would say is worse.
Okay. Well, I don't know.
But that tends to be the case with most mods of that headphone.
Right. Sure. I'm just
saying it's not a hint.
The spirit of somebody saying, hey, these headphones can all be improved with just a little bit of attention given to them. Let me figure out what I can do. And I applaud the spirit of that. Even if we should really connect with him and get him, ensure that he gets like a clone rig or something.
Should we? Is that
I
our
don't know. I don't know.
responsibility?
I don't know if that would.
No, okay. We don't need to. I'm
Yeah.
just saying it would be beneficial to him to do that.
I mean, I think it would be beneficial to him to do that with the money he makes selling copper things for HD 600s.
Yeah, sure. So if you're watching this, Custom Cans, stop using the mini DSPers. And like I say this as someone who used to use that like years ago. And
I mean, the ears made sense when it came out. There wasn't
Yeah.
a better alternative when it came out.
When
It's
it came
just that
out,
time
yeah.
has marched on.
That's the point. That's the point.
People in chat are saying that we are full of ourselves. I would agree with that. I consider that my
Good
cup
take.
runneth over with Blaine.
Say it's Blaine. You're not going to get a different answer.
You're just fully. You're just. Yeah.
I'm
Blaine has
comfortable in
been
my
poured
skin.
into you.
I know who I am.
I think one thing I would say is that I think a person has more reason to be confident if they're willing to have a conversation, either to, you know, in a valid manner defend whatever stances they're taking, or have a discussion that then leads to them changing their mind.
Mhm.
The time when
You
I
have to be
think
open
it's
to changing
bad
your
that
mind.
someone is overconfident is when they are
Yeah.
overconfident and refuse to budge from a position regardless of what evidence is presented to them. And the important thing to them is being right, not
Because
as in
To,
being
to
right.
nobody will
audiophiles'
ever
credit,
admit
I
to
actually
that.
think a lot of the overconfident people are willing to have their, if not have their minds changed, at least are willing to accept.
I don't know, except for the
I
ones
disagree
with
with that.
I disagree with
There's
that
been a
too.
lot of people that I've spoken to that the minute that you start providing like a slightly valid
Yes, I know
It's
you
the
both have
authority
had
games, man.
experiences like that. I have
It's
had
the
them
authority
too.
games.
It's just I've
No, but
also
I've had
had
so few
experiences where
experiences of the
people
other.
are willing
Yeah.
to
Honestly,
listen.
the only people who I've encountered who are willing to not the only people, the majority of the people who I've encountered who are willing to change their minds about things are people who I continue to interact with today about these things. You know, like it's the people who are not willing to change their minds, or they'll double down on whatever, where I'm just like, okay, there's no point in continuing this conversation, because it's like this is an exercise in futility, because nobody is actually getting anywhere. It's just an authority game all the way down, and what's actually true is just secondary to any of this.
Yeah. I really appreciate like just the people that you can have those conversations with. There are some people that I consider very good friends that we agree on basically nothing with audio.
Oh yeah,
But we can have an actual constructive conversation about anything. It's completely respectful. No one's of the assumption that we're trying to win an argument or something. And I always just really enjoy talking to those people,
yeah.
because everyone gets something out of it. And
People at Can
again, the
Jams will come up
respect
to
is
us
important.
and will be like, I disagree with everything that you say, but you know, I appreciate your content
Shake my
regardless.
hand.
And
Yeah.
yeah. It's a surreal experience, but it's cool that people are able to recognize, you know, these are just the opinions of one person, you know.
Absolutely. And to anyone watching, I mean, one thing I would say, and going back to sort of that point about constructive criticism, if there are things that you think someone that you watch or someone online is doing wrong and stuff, you know, respectfully point out these issues and have a conversation with them about it. Because quite frankly, if the person is aiming to be helpful and constructive, they will take it on board. The biggest two issues are when either people are unwilling to take criticism and react defensively to it, in which case you probably shouldn't be watching that person anyway, because think about what that says about everything else they put out. But also, just like from a creator's perspective, it's challenging when someone either, as I said earlier, doesn't tell you something, and it could be something that either you just didn't know was a problem and could really easily be fixed, and you just don't find out about it because the first time you hear about it is when people have been complaining about it on some other thread because they don't want to tell you because they think you might react defensively. Yeah,
I mean,
talk to
generally
people.
speaking, just don't assume defensiveness, right? And frankly,
Yeah.
even if someone's defensive, it's worth bringing things to people's attention. Like if we don't engage in good faith, then good faith doesn't exist. It has to start from someone.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I also not to belabor it, but I do think we tend to remember most vividly the times when people are steadfast in their ways. But I
Well,
think
also, I would say, Griffin, you also engage with Discord a lot more than
I'm
some of
not
them
even
that I
talking
do.
about Discord. I
Oh, okay.
actually think if you think about it, like most of our audience is probably people that are like this. Like
Hmm.
most of our audience who are kind of interested in learning about headphones, how they work, and kind of the finer details of, I guess, what we may call the science or the theory or whatever. Those are all people who've kind of been along with us on the journey and were at one time
Mhm.
maybe less knowledgeable and have, like us, just accrued more and more knowledge as time goes on. And that doesn't happen if you're not open to new information every time something new comes up.
And well, and in the spirit of that, I feel you have to take on board the like foundationally the idea that there is a likelihood, there's a possibility that what you have built yourself up to, feel is foundational and true could be shown to be wrong, and you need to be able to amend your viewpoint on it if that's the case. Like for example, we've talked a lot about frequency response at the eardrum. Well, what happens if there is suddenly a soundstage metric? And we've talked about that's one example, but like we've also talked a lot about like, okay, maybe there's this, like, maybe acoustic impedance is another thing, and Axel Grell is looking into that. You have to be open to the possibility of other factors in this particular cases. That's what comes to mind, but I think it applies to like everything. You know, maybe the
Steve
threshold for
Nichols was
audibility of distortion is, uh, what Cameron says it is. I don't know.
I don't have a particular opinion on where it is. I just think my stance is basically that I don't think we have a good understanding of where
Right.
it is.
Okay.
And I also think that the limit is going to be, I would say, drastically different depending on whether you're looking at static or changing and dynamic behaviors.
Right.
That's my personal belief. But the point is that we don't actually have substantial evidence to land on a conclusion. So I'm also not confident in saying that anything is the case, because it would be, well, unscientific to do so.
Yeah.
Steve Nichols, on what you were just saying, Resolve, he's just asked something which is saying, are there other measurements that can be used to quantify a headphone sound other than frequency response? It seems like speakers have several specs, whilst headphones mainly just show frequency response. Well, as Resolve was saying, it's not necessarily possible to absolutely rule out the possibility of something else like acoustic impedance being a factor, although that doesn't mean that we don't have an opinion on it.
Not yet.
The reason why speakers have extra things like directivity and stuff is because, well, just the way that sound bounces around a room is not the same as how sound in a headphone behaves, or even just the fact that your ear is going to be in different places, whereas with a headphone we measure it at the ear. That's how everything's working. But
yeah, I think that the fact that you get off axis in addition to on axis, no matter your position, is the most important part about speaker directivity. That person may also have been talking about compression, which is a real factor in speakers. If you look at Aaron's reviews, you'll see that a lot of speakers, even 100 dB, you're talking about a loss of sensitivity of maybe 1 or 2 dB, right? And that means that both the FR is shifting to some extent as a function of level, and there probably are audible distortion components, or at least hypothetically audible distortion components. Neither of those things really happen with headphones, not at levels that won't destroy your ears with competently designed headphones.
But to answer,
and even with the acoustic impedance thing, like at the moment, pending further evidence, which to be clear, we're not saying this is not the case. We're saying it's not really reasonable to think that it would be the case until evidence of such is provided. But like at the moment, the main or the most likely answer as to why acoustic impedance might matter would just be that it then affects the frequency response in the form of HVGF variation and stuff.
Well, I think what Axel Grell's looking into is if frequency response is held constant, is there a preference for low acoustic impedance? Is that correct, Blaine?
Yes, which that's the kind of evidence that we would need to see, and that would be very interesting.
We have limited evidence on this one based on acoustic impedance measurements that were only done over a limited frequency band, but they did indicate that there was a correlation between the measured openness / low acoustic impedance and listener preference.
Now who's to say that couldn't be some other psychoacoustic factor that people are subjectively selecting for?
Well, I think that there's basically two potentials there. One is that there was an error, right? Like one is that they didn't actually properly control for FR.
Right.
The other is that people are aware of the acoustic loading of their ears, and that affects their perceptions, right? And that's Grell's hypothesis. And I don't think that's an unreasonable hypothesis, but the data
Yeah.
isn't quite there yet.
How would you control for FR tight enough to have that? Like, that's the thing that I don't quite get is how can you
Yield
actually do
probe
that?
mics.
You would
Yield what?
need a probe microphone,
Yeah.
and you would really, I mean,
Yeah.
if I was doing this, that's what I would do, is an open probe. The acoustic Z won't matter much at high frequencies, so you don't have to super worry about positioning, but it has to be open enough not to significantly affect, the sound going through, or alternatively, you have to know what the effect is, and it has to be fairly consistent between the headphones. But I mean, you could do it. It's just that it would have to be done fairly carefully.
Yeah. To me, there is an element of, I see this in the community a lot, and it's picking up steam, where people are we talked about this a little bit last time, but like people want there to be something other than frequency response that really matters. They want something. They want to be able to start looking at other stuff, and almost as if frequency response is uninteresting to them. But to me, it's so much the other way. It's like there's so much in frequency response that's fascinating.
Well, it's caused pretty much chiefly by the fact that they're overconfident in the read of frequency
Well, yeah, that's what I'm
response that
saying.
they
Yeah,
currently have.
yeah, that's how it relates to this topic. Also,
Yeah.
it's entirely Mark Ryan's fault, and we should put the blame at Squiglink.
Wait, I thought we agreed it was entirely Crinical's fault.
Oh, right. Okay, sorry. All right. Crinical's fault.
It is
Because
Kringraph at
the,
its
the
base.
tonal,
It's
the
Critical
tonal
and Mark
technical
Ryan's fault.
distinction, right?
Oh, right.
Like
Yeah.
Mark Ryan was framed by Crinical.
Yeah.
Hashtag free Mark Ryan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. I was gonna say, with respect to Steve's question there, I think the more interesting measurement that you can do isn't, or the more interesting thing measurement to do with sound quality that we should be striving to unpack a little bit more and represent more, is not separate from frequency response, but rather something like confidence intervals for frequency response, confidence in predictability, right, for something like frequency response. And as an example, was working on a review of the Aria Unveiled, and one of the things about it is that it does perform well above 6 kilohertz typically. I mean, it's still a little bit more on the kind of lean side of things for the overall sound signature, but the fine grained stuff performs quite well above 6 kilohertz, which is kind of rare in headphones. And what's cool about this is it's also very low acoustic impedance, meaning that the measurements you see on the graph are going to be highly predictable and more predictable for that headphone than you would get for like this headphone or most headphones. And if we had some way of quantifying that, or a measure that indicated, goodness and badness for this, that would go a long way to helping people better understand, or before they buy something, what something's going to sound like.
At the end of the day, the important measurement is how expensive is it, because that clearly tells you how good it's going to be.
Of course, that's how that works. Now, somebody's going to take that out of context and say, see, these guys, they are the dark side, because they're...
I mean, no, but like we are kind of the dark side, not like the only dark side, but it does need to be, iterated as often as possible that when it comes to overconfidence, the people who have their noses in the data are plenty guilty of
Absolutely.
overconfidence when it comes to how we present data, what data we present, and why.
Yep, absolutely.
I'll tell you,
absolutely.
I did find a product category where the price almost directly correlated to performance. And it's ironically one of the most snake oily categories, which is power conditioners. The much more expensive ones were objectively much, much more effective.
It's not surprising when you consider that a power conditioner to do a power conditioner well is fairly expensive.
Yeah.
But conversely, just get equipment that has better input power filtering and PSRR. Like, power conditioning is cope.
Could we talk about...
No, I agree it shouldn't be necessary. It was just interesting that like the price versus performance, to my own surprise, was like Audio Quest was the best one.
So we could get into gettier cases with respect to overconfidence, but Griffin would check out. So could we get into the other sort of like dark side of audio,
please?
not just the hobby, Well, I'm just wondering what your
Really?
guys' takes are as far as like the dark side of the audio industry, whether we should touch on that as well, because that's like there is a
Well,
lot of.
if there is another
Well,
dark side of the industry, what do you guys think it is probably a good
I mean,
place
it's
to
all
start.
snake oil stuff, right? Is it not?
yeah, I mean, it's clearly the massive amount of actual scams.
Yeah.
Like, let's set aside for a moment the people who have earnest belief in their products and just focus on the people who are selling the purple
Knowingly.
fuses,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. There's a
Like
difference
the
between somebody doing
synergistic
that.
researches of the
Yeah.
world.
There's a difference between somebody doing that and like what Alexander is doing with at RAL, right? Like Alexander is very keen on the products that he's made, genuinely loves them, etc. This is not, he's not trying to fool anybody the way that those people are.
Oh, this is
So-
interesting. Mark Ryan says, listener and I had a disagreement about who is responsible for the snake oil, the businesses or the consumers. Now, before Griffin answers,
Question.
I'd like to play a game. The three of us are going to guess which of those Griffin blames. I'm going to say it's the consumers. What do you guys think?
I'm going to say
The consumers.
manufacturers.
I'm gonna say
Okay.
consumers.
I actually don't
Whichever.
remember which one I said. Mark,
Well,
do you
presumably
remember?
it's a belief you still hold.
I mean,
So
what if Mark changed my mind?
there you go.
Yeah,
We were talking
sure.
about being willing to change our minds. Maybe
I
Griffin
blame the
changed his mind.
consumers personally.
Okay, Mark, what did he say?
Listener blames reviewers.
No, a listener blames the audio files,
Thanks,
which
Timmy.
is typically appropriate.
Also, shouts out to Timmy in chat.
Yeah.
If you were a subscriber to Giz Audio but are not subscribed to his new channel,
Oh.
Tim Tuned, you
I-
should subscribe.
I would say that if anything, the dark side of the industry isn't so much like that snake oil exists, because everyone kind of knows that and can choose to avoid it if they want. The dark side of the industry, I would say, is the stuff that goes on behind closed doors that most people either don't know about or aren't certain is happening.
I mean,
Some of the stuff that I'm sure you guys have also seen happening between like manufacturers and reviewers, or just some of the
Yeah.
publications and stories and stuff that happen is pretty shocking, to the extent that some of the stuff that's happened, I don't even know how it's just not like been made very
well,
public.
but
in certain
there
cases.
is also
Listen,
an element
what
of
happens between me, a manufacturer, and a briefcase of cash is my business.
Literally your business.
Yeah. No, there
Yeah.
is also something though with that where it's like people don't want to mention it because they don't want to necessarily be the first, to kick the hornet's nest. But once that dominoes falls, this is mixed metaphors, then stuff becomes. I'm thinking of course the DCS situation where with Cameron, right? But also Aaron's thing with Tecton and all that kind of stuff. There's other stuff that happens in the industry that we don't talk about, and it's not common knowledge, that even I am like, I don't want to talk about this. I don't want to make this stuff public because I don't want to be the one to stir the hornet's nest, partially because I don't have time to deal with the drama that results from it. So I just don't.
Stir the hornet's nest.
I'm mixing metaphors.
He's mixing things all over
Intentionally.
the place. Yeah.
That's an interesting one, because like there are some brands that will do things legitimately wrong, and you think, why the hell would you do that? If for any other reason, then surely you have to realize this is going to end up in an absolute PR nightmare for you. And
Yeah.
that's happened several times just last year. But then
Yeah,
there's
like
also
the
other
guy who
times where
copyright struck the phonograph preamplifier review.
yeah, Jesus Christ.
Oh, the what was the brand name for that? Oh,
I've forgotten as well.
it was the guy's name, wasn't it? It was like
Tom Evans.
Tom Evans. Yeah.
Yeah, Tom
Yeah.
Evans.
Yeah.
But then there's also been times when like I've had a manufacturer tell me, and they told me which reviewer it was as well. They're like, we sent this guy a product to review. After he received it, he then contacted us saying or suggesting that we make a donation to his channel.
Yeah.
And when we said that we weren't wanting to do that, he
Yeah.
then gave it a negative review and returned it damaged. Like,
Yeah.
what the hell?
Hell
And
yeah.
I'm like, why didn't you say anything publicly about that? And they're like, because he can, just turn it on its head and make us look like the bad guy or something. So we just left it at that, which fair enough. But there's stuff like that.
I
which
would be
happens,
very
and
interested in seeing things like that made public.
Yeah.
Yes, I mean, without like, it's not something that I can do because I don't have all the communications and evidence and stuff.
Of course.
But
Mark
sorry,
says, "Sorry, that was me."
but like,
No, but there's also
you know,
situations
and
where people have stolen gear.
yeah,
Like
and some of these are like big reviewers, and
Yeah.
th- it's tricky. That I would say is the real dark side of audio, is the stuff that goes on that people aren't aware of, and that is just outright bad for everyone. It's bad for manufacturers, it's bad for the consumers, because it means that you're not actually getting real reviews. You're getting whoever decided to pay the
I
blackmail.
don't understand how that old school like magazine kind of, I don't even know what to call it. That side of things still functions somehow, where it's like it's so obviously a quid pro quo thing. There's an expectation of positive sentiment if a product gets sent out. There's a uh, whatever brand sponsors the site. By the way, here's the gear for review. Oh, it happens to be the best thing ever. I'm shocked.
Okay, so are we subtweeting like what hi-fi or stereophile here? I'm trying to figure out what sort of who we're tilting at.
For those,
I
they
wasn't
are
thinking
different.
I actually wasn't thinking of either of those, but but
who are you
both of
thinking
those
of?
fit that model. I was thinking of the. So I'm not going to say who I was thinking of.
What? Why?
I'll say a couple.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, so like, okay, actually, all right. I won't mention specific names, but I will mention a couple things which I just find ridiculous. One of which, there's one. I don't know if this is technically a magazine, but like it's a sort of old-timey style review website. And when you go to their website, you literally have to scroll down past a page and a half.
Are you thinking of Six Moons?
No, but Six Moons. Six Moons isn't as bad for this. But this one, okay, this one I shall just say, this is Mono and Stereo. Go to Mono and Stereo's website. Oh my god. You have to scroll past a page and a half of ads to get to anything resembling content.
Yeah.
What the hell? That's one thing which I just couldn't get. The magazine stuff, I mean, it's tricky because we don't know for sure who has been paid and who's not. But even just talking to some manufacturers, and they'll be like, "Yeah, you have to pay them." That's just how it works.
And when you hear about stories like that, that's a signal that like there's this part of the industry from like a long time ago. There's still a hangover from that people are dealing with now, or that's going on right now. And this also makes it worse for everybody because it actually makes the products worse, because whenever there's then criticism from any other review outlet of a product, the brand goes, "This is the first time that I've heard this kind of criticism," or this is never
only
happened.
sent it to advertising agencies.
Yeah, exactly. I am gonna plant the flag here and call out some of the sites that I'm not a fan of. I'm not saying they're doing this necessarily, because I think in many cases it's less of a nefarious thing and maybe more of a skill issue thing. But all those sites that give everything like 9 out of 10s or 8 out of 10s, like Headphonia, Headphonics, the ones that have the ratings.
Honestly, I feel like
I've never seen
Forbes has been a
Sure.
particularly bad source of audio articles over the past few years. That is like a little bit under discussed just how bad they are.
Yeah. So has, of course, What Hi-Fi, CNET has.
CNET's still a thing.
This is preaching to the choir. I'm sure like folks are not. I think the folks watching this are not regularly going to those places for their information. But
can I bring some information from the future? And then in a year's time we can see if I'm right. So What Hi-Fi's top like 5 DAC recommendations for 2026 next year? As I said, I'm from the future, so I already know this.
Yeah.
It's the Chord Dave, Chord TT2, Chord Mojo 2, and the Audio Quest Dragonfly, whatever the newest one is. Those are their top DACs, and they will be.
Those were their top DACs this year, weren't they?
Yes. And last year.
And last year,
and the year before that.
Is it?
And they might throw the iFi's NDAC in there as well.
I can't remember the name of the website. It might be What Hi-Fi, but it's one of those that gives the listicles. But every year there's the top headphones are something from Grado.
Mm-hmm. It's What Hi-Fi.
Yeah.
It's Grado and Bear Dynamic. Yeah.
What Hi-Fi is, I think, almost to the straw man. Like
Yeah, it
Stereophile,
is.
you
It
could
is.
say, Stereophile has a very compressed review range, if you will. I've never seen a negative review in Stereophile, but I see variations in level of praise. So you can kind of expand
Yes.
it back into a real rating scale. What Hi-Fi paradoxically does actually have some variation in their review scores, but they're garbage. I have never received even an iota of information from anything on What Hi-Fi. It's surreal.
Yeah.
It's like they somehow cracked generative AI 20 years before everyone else.
Imagine when they learn they can do all of that for free.
Yeah.
Um,
It's funny when
That
you
was one
speak
that
to some
Corinne in
people though,
particular.
and they'll talk about that aspect openly. They'll be like, "Well, yeah, we know that they don't post negative reviews, so you just have to try and interpret the level of praise." Like I've had multiple people just say that,
you
and then be like,
you
"Yeah,
have
I
to be
subscribe to
you have to be
Stereophile,
a
and so
uh,
that's my primary source for reviews." I'm like, "Why?"
you have to be an AI whisperer to
I
figure out.
think I think if
But
we look at how people actually score things in like listening tests, I think that there is some honesty to the way Stereophile does it. Like people very seldom actually say this is dog shit. We say that because we've basically conditioned ourselves to use a much larger range of scores. But
Mm.
for the layperson, if you put a headphone on their head, if you put a speaker in front of them, the odds of them saying this fucking sucks
Yeah,
is
rarely will someone give
very
something
low.
below like a 4 out of 10 or 3 out of 10.
See,
Yep.
I would say the
I
same thing
do.
even for review sites that I do generally appreciate, like Sound Guys. They
And Mark
gave,
Ryan.
yeah, no, Mark
Well,
Ryan is given
no,
two out
but
of
also
5.
also Sound Guys, I think it's a little different because Sound Guys isn't just giving him and this is true for ratings as well, where it's
Yeah,
not just a sound quality metric.
for sure. I'm talking just
Um,
specifically in their breakdown where they do give a sound quality metric.
yeah,
The Bayer Dynamic Eventho thing, right? They gave that a 6.8 out of 10 or something like that.
that's
And I'm like
rough.
3 is generous there for that headphone. Like I don't understand how you get 6 point anything out of that. But that's, because the scales the expectation of goodness is all fucked up, right?
I'm just like
One thing
imagining
that
the
If it
measurement
makes
in my head.
sound,
It doesn't look like gutter trash. It just
uh,
looks bad.
it the Evento 300
Yeah, the one
is
with like the
is
shifted ear gain and the huge bass, right?
it is gutter trash. It is like one of the
Okay.
worst sounding things of all time.
one
Now
thing you just mentioned.
the
Sorry.
baseline, it seems from many of these places that if it can produce sound, it gets 5 out of 10.
Well, so the reason I bring up the specific features in the frequency response measurement is because, and I don't know this about Sound Guys, so I would love if we could talk to Sound Guys about their evaluative process and see how this has an effect, if at all.
By all
But
count, they
I
seem
know
well
I know they
intentioned.
do
I
use
like their stuff more.
MDAX.
Yeah, I know, but I like their stuff. I would choose a Sound Guys review over a ratings review personally for headphones, for example.
I feel like I can get more information from a ratings review.
Yeah, I
Really?
don't know that I agree, actually.
Yeah, because the ratings review will have stuff like the on-head in-ear mic
Oh,
bullshit.
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Like
I just want to.
ratings. Yep.
No, sorry, no. I'm sorry. I'm trying to. The latency is making it hard. I'm not trying to interrupt.
No, go.
Okay, I just wanted to quickly say, because I don't want to just shit on them without calling out good stuff. One thing about Stereophile that I do sincerely appreciate is that they have provided measurements of gear and have done so for a very long time.
Mhm.
Regardless of the fact that I find their subjective reviews of stuff basically useless, the fact that they have provided measurements is awesome, and props to them for doing that. I'm surprised that they've been able to do that, because there's a lot of manufacturers which only sell the kind of stuff which, like, they only ever let the places like Stereophile review it because they know that they'll get a positive review. And I'm surprised that a lot of manufacturers are willing to let them measure their stuff. But yeah, props to them for doing
I think that if you look at how John describes products with unusual measurements, you see why, though. It is very
Yes,
seldom that he will make commentary that is negative. Like, I've
that's fair.
seen reviews of some of the worst performing equipment I have ever seen, and his commentary basically amounted to, "Huh, that's atypical,"
I mean,
which
there's
is
definitely
true, but very mild.
I do. There are problems with his measurements. Like for the longest time, when he was measuring a DAC or an amplifier, he'd put like a 1 kilohertz tone through it, and he'd show it with the x-axis set from 20 hertz to 1 kilohertz. So you couldn't see any harmonics or anything. And I don't quite know what the point of
Perfect
that measurement
distortion.
was
Oh
supposed to
no,
be.
I actually know why he was
But
doing that.
why?
That's to
Different
look
power
for
supply noise? Or?
yeah, it's looking for intermodulation with noise from the power supply rails.
Right. Okay.
But I mean, like, I don't, and it's also, it gives you a view of the noise spectrum, and you know that the muting circuits aren't off. Like, it's not a great view, but I get why you would do that. I don't personally see it as a sensible approach, but I get why you would do that.
I guess maybe, but I just the fact that he didn't show actual harmonic
The
distortion.
harmonics, yeah, no, that was
like,
weird.
why?
I
Bass.
mean,
Anyway.
You say you're going to show people total harmonic distortion and then you don't show them anything. That's incredibly based behavior, actually.
so
I have a question for you guys.
What's that?
yes,
Would you consider, we're talking just to bring it back to the dark side of audio, would you
Mhm.
consider situations where there are products that technically do products that are just exorbitantly priced for no reason, part of that dark side?
like what? Like, are we
Well,
talking
I
about
mean,
like
as soon as
the
you get
Utopia,
into,
or are we talking about like
well, I'm
the
just thinking, as soon as you
AG1?
get into the high end, it feels, especially these days, that the products aren't necessarily more better or even competitive. Often, it's that they just are more expensive. And I'm wondering what you like, if you think that that's, and this is with respect to headphones, but also like, we could talk about like DACs and amps, for example, right? Like, would we consider that part of the dark side, right?
Sorry,
The
would we
fact that
consider what part of the dark side? I wasn't answering
the
specifically.
exorbitant price tags that,
Oh,
because I was gonna say, like, it feels like the industry is kind of going in two very different directions, and price tags are more a function of um somebody's market strategy rather than merit, if that
I
makes
have a
sense.
Well,
few thoughts on
implying that
this.
that's new.
It's not new.
It's not
I see it continuing in this in
the
both directions, right?
the big thing is okay. It being exorbitantly priced doesn't necessarily mean that it's overpriced, though. Like something can be very expensive but not be overpriced.
But that's what I'm
Something
asking.
like
Like
because there's some stuff which like I will never be able to even hope to afford, like the Wadax DAC, for example. It's like $100,000 or something. I think they've got a new one which is like 40, but it's because they designed their own ASIC. Like that costs
Well,
so much money
the
to do.
subsonic storm is another example, kind of like that, where it's like it didn't need to be this complicated. It didn't need to be
Yeah,
made
but
of
like
whatever these materials are.
I think that regardless of the necessity of it, because otherwise there's endless debate about whether something was technically needed to be done, but like as long as something isn't just overpriced in terms of you are charging vastly more than it would have it cost you to design and build it, then I don't really have an issue with those. I might have an issue with the product and might think that it's not worth it because some of the things, like just shoving gold into it, is not going to make it sound better. But some companies literally
How
do
do
just
you know?
that. Well,
checkmate.
that's my opinion. But then there are, and there's even some gray area where there's companies which, like, the products are not overpriced and they're not making fat profit margins, but a lot of the money that you're spending on the product is going into marketing that product, or having it be
Yeah.
available in brick and mortar dealers all over the place rather than just sell it online. There's some stuff which, like, it's a genuine cost and the manufacturer genuinely has to make that up somehow, which means the product's going to be more expensive, but it literally does not go even directly into the construction of the product. It's a completely separate thing. Putting a big banner up or having a bigger room at Munich does not make the product sound better, but it still has to be paid for.
Although, if we look at things like the iPod or the AirPods, there is consumer benefit to advertising. Like, in a large part, creating an image around a product is something that people are clearly willing to pay for, which is why people
That's
have
fair.
branded goods. And that extends to
Potentially,
hi-fi as well.
but
Yeah,
like
I'm
I
not the
consider
right
that a
person for that.
legitimate cost. But for me, the
Yeah.
image of a product is of
Yeah.
no concern. For some people, it is, and that's
Yeah.
fine.
Well, I mean,
But
yeah,
for
that's
me,
because we're
what other people
iconoclasts.
think about my setup is of no consequence. So
Again, I mean, the
Exactly.
problem here is we have 4 iconoclasts on a show, and then we comment on the general public, which is
These
I
stupid.
mean,
people
Did you
out there.
just
I
genuinely-
mean, I care about how my headphone looks. A little bit.
Well, you care about how your headphone looks, but do you care?
Yeah.
So do I.
No,
there's
again,
there's looking aesthetically
Gray,
pleasing is one
beige,
thing, but like
black.
having a brand image of, like, I want other people to see me in this is a different
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
I will put something to you guys.
Please.
If there were two products, one of them was a Beats by Dre product, and one of them was just some white label thing that nobody recognized. They were equally good sounding, et cetera, et cetera. Perfect, they perfectly fit our use case. I believe that everyone here would pay at least $20 markup to not have the Beats by Dre logo on it.
I would.
I don't think
Really?
that's true. I would go for whichever one is more likely to have better after sales support.
Literally would not care.
Imagine that they are identical in every respect except for
I
brand.
potentially
What
would.
color
would go
is
for-
it?
But that's
Beats
because
by Dre
that's such a-
usually has more colors.
Imagine again that it is
Dude,
identical.
I would want
the difference is purely the
I would
logo.
want the Beats by Dre one because then I can listen to my sick beats.
Honestly, the Beats by Dre one would make it so if I tried to share it with anyone, they would
Yeah.
have a better experience, more likely.
Yeah. And they
No,
might
fair
think I'm
enough.
cool.
I would probably
Imagine
go
that.
for the Beats by Dre one, honestly. And I definitely wouldn't pay
That-
more for the white label one. I wouldn't, like, if the Beats
That's what
by
I'm
Dre
saying.
one is less expensive, I would absolutely
if they
go for
didn't
that one.
cost, if the cost was the same to me, I would choose the white one, right? Or the totally brandless one, right? Of course.
Mhm.
But if you're telling me I have to pay $20 more for the iconoclast one, no.
Nah, that's a cheeseburger, my guy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, in Canada, that's not even a cheeseburger, but
That's a slice of cheese, my guy.
it's exactly.
I mean,
I
Beats is-
believe this with
I
Griffin because
genuinely
Griffin
might
has
pay-
earpods.
I
Or
might
AirPods.
pay a little bit extra, and I mean a little bit. If there was any meaningful difference in price, I would just get whatever's cheaper. But I might pay a little bit to not have the Beats one. But I think that's more just because, like, I don't care about spending more to get something with like a positive, fancy brand image than being like, because people will wear AirPods as a fashion accessory, literally not listening to music. That's not what I mean. But I would pay a little bit of money to not have to repeatedly explain to people, no, I know Beats are usually terrible, but like this one's actually different. Just trust me. Let me explain. To not have to go through that conversation
Well,
has
and
some
to
value
not
to
have
me.
people have the impression that you bought something as a fashion item. Like that is
I
something
don't
that I
know.
will pay a small
Intention, yeah.
premium.
I would still buy the Beats just to be like, yeah, I did it. Like,
Okay, so
just
the thing is,
to be a dick.
this is just meta iconoclasm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like this is just you
Exactly.
saying I'm so iconoclastic that I'm rebelling against the idea of
Exactly.
being conventionally
Exactly.
iconoclastic.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is. I wanna just address a thing in the chat. Scott brings
damn
up
it.
Scott brings up a good point. I feel like a lot of the time the expensive items are really just there to offset costs for lower cost items. This is certainly true. I'm thinking of, like, for example, a lot of the like the Hi-Fi Man releases, right? Like, it feels that way, at least, where they're very similar. They're made of slightly different materials.
I think the most direct example I could think of is Odyssey's most recent lineup,
Wait, the LCD5 and M500?
starting with LCD5, and then they kind of trickle down that form factor to the MM500, which was, I think, roughly a third of the cost,
But it's pretty.
and then trickled it down even further
yeah.
to one that's like a tenth of the, no, sorry, a fifth
But
of the cost of that one.
they're quite different. I would say they're more different than the Hi-Fi Man offerings are.
Well, yeah,
I
I'm
don't
saying,
think that the framing here is quite right. Like
what do you mean?
nobody is going to sell an unprofitable product in the long run, right? Like Hi-Fi Man sells their cheap products because they make money off of them. What their high-end products can potentially do is justify expenses in R&D that eventually, because Hi-Fi Man always discounts their products over time, move down market.
Yeah.
In that respect, I kind of see high-end products, at least for some companies, as redistributive in a sense. Like they are a way that rich people end up funding things that can eventually benefit people who are of lower disposable income.
This is
But
the
I will
weirdest
say that I don't.
analysis of all time.
I mean, hey, it's not like there's a lot of people who are living paycheck to actually.
No,
they
I'm
probably are.
just saying. I don't know if that intention is explicit in their if they're like they're
Oh
intending
God,
to
no.
operate that
No,
way.
I mean,
Like
Hi-Fi Man
that might
wants
just
to
be
make
the
money.
outcome. I
Yeah,
don't
no,
know if
it's just the result, right?
It's just
Like
the result, yeah.
is. I mean, I've advocated this as a theory of how you run a hi-fi company, though. Like,
Yeah.
that you should definitely start with something that's high end, high margin, both from a PR standpoint and because
I just
To my
realized Cameron's got
slightly
beef.
egalitarian heart, it's a little bit Robin Hoodie.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to address in chat was I've lost it. Oh yeah, we were talking about the manufacturing, or basically like the market strategy, and then last round it says like the DMS Omega, and that's an example where I think if he could have sold it more cheaply, he would have, right? Like that's if you're dealing with like a small batch kind of manufacturing, you have to consider things like that. Blaine may
I mean, small
disagree,
batch
but
manufacturing really shouldn't occur, but unfortunately, the
yeah, but
world
I
is
would say that's
inefficient.
that's true for not just that, but like any of those single person headphones that are coming out. They all have to be priced significantly higher than what they would want to price them at, I imagine, because it's
Yeah, I
like
mean,
otherwise you can't even cover your own costs to do it.
if you, and the thing is, if you, you or maybe two other people are making something in a garage or on a kitchen table, and you have to pay rent, you have to have a pretty meaningful pad just to ensure that you can still fucking make rent. Like, there's
Yeah.
the margins that a large business can sustain safely are much slimmer than what a small business can sustain safely, and that's part of why small businesses generally fail.
Yeah. Yeah. But if you look at it, like, the DCA folks, the way they started ZMF, those were, I mean, in large part started by sort of, single creators that eventually grew. But at the time, the ones that they came out with were basically mods that they were selling at fairly high price
Were
tags too.
mods.
Yeah. There were quite high price tags for those mods as well, right?
Yeah.
And then they came out with their own, headphones that were also over $1,000 for each one of them. So I just see this as like, there's just more of that. Anyway, should we move on? Let's move on to the next topic here.
Sure.
I feel like we didn't
These are
actually
actually
answer the
so
topic
uncomfortable.
at all.
Okay, what's your answer?
Well, no, I mean, like, I sort of find it interesting that we diverged so quickly
there an
from
answer?
why is there overconfidence into what is the dark side.
Well,
I
the
guess
dark
it's
side was
because
the
that was the more.
thumbnail.
Yeah, I know. I'm just like pondering.
These headphones, they're like,
So, I mean,
they
to me,
look like over ears, but they're actually on ears, really.
Yeah.
But like, then this bit here sticks out. I don't know how well you can see that on camera, but
Oh,
it's
does
like
it have
it
the
sticks out
Sennheiser bump thing?
just
Like
to
like
make
on
sure
the
that it like
HD599?
No,
jams
Cameron.
against your ear,
Cameron,
and you can only wear it for
in
about 5
in
minutes.
50 years, somebody will come out with something that looks and functions like that for nostalgia purposes. I said this before.
Probably, yeah.
People are super nostalgic about suffering.
Okay, so
You know?
for those who are not in our Discord, and by that I mean the content team Discord, the cute cause here is that I linked Andrew Park DAP that has a cassette deck UI, and he's very unhappy that it exists. And to
Yeah.
be clear, I'm also unhappy that it exists, but I'm less
I'm pretty sure that
unhappy.
thing has a pretty robust feature set.
Well, yeah.
Oh no, it
Hey.
looks like a lovely product. I just cringe every time I see it.
I'm just saying, we may as well visualize, occasional impalement.
Yeah, but I mean, so my
yeah, it's
answer to
great.
the question was my question, right? Like the answer to the what is the audio dark side question is this question.
Yeah,
Is kind of the under discussed overconfidence that basically permeates the entirety of the space, and yeah, really just makes discussion a lot harder, more fragmented, less certain. Yeah, as far as what causes it, I mean, I think there's a little bit about it, which is the kind of uh, this is all people, not just audiophiles. But like, if you just think about
All
any subreddit that exists around a hobby for
Mhm.
consumption, like there is a noted interest on the part of consumers to be a well-educated consumer and to think of themselves as a well-educated consumer. And I think
Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's
part of that
more.
part of that drive is absolutely fundamental to the audio hobby.
I will say, again, we talked about this before, but like the weird one to me is to do largely with the anti-measurement crowd, where they've already made up their mind
Bring
so
forth
long
the
ago.
glue pot.
Honestly, I was when I formulated this question, I was 100% thinking more of the graph sniffers. Like I was
Oh, okay.
absolutely thinking of more of the people who
I mean, I would say
think they have an
that's a
understanding of
much
frequency
clearer target.
response.
Yeah, that's a much clearer target, I think. But to me,
Yes.
it's like I guess because like the ones that I encounter more are, or the ones that I'm having dialogue with more, are the ones who might the, it's folks like on our forum, for example, where they're basically uh, quibbling with the things that we talk about when we talk about frequency response at the eardrum, and they say, well, why don't you talk about, you know, why don't
Time
you talk
domain.
about, yeah, exactly, stuff like that. And it's because they've already made up their mind about the limits of what frequency response indicates. And
But
in a
that's what I'm saying.
way,
These people are graph sniffers. Like regardless of what
you think
they
they
will
are?
call themselves, these are the
So
people
many, no,
that
no, no. But
I'm thinking of. Like
I think
we're
there's two
thinking about
different
the same
types.
thing here. Actually,
I
it's
think
that
that there's
people
two
are
different types of
overconfident
people.
in their read in one part, which lets them move on to the other things and stops them from actually
Yeah. I
learning
get what you're
properly.
saying. There is that, but I'm also thinking of the folks who, wow, we've lost they're just tired of this. I'm also thinking of the folks who are so against measurements of any kind because they feel that they are unfairly representing these products. That's
Okay.
the noise that I'm also,
I mean, that's not a segment that doesn't exist.
yeah. But I'm saying these folks don't bother to even consider, because they're so entrenched in that viewpoint. It, like it's almost like that. It's like there's like an inertia behind that,
Yeah.
that uh, it just creates further entrenchment because they're never going to bother to like even consider, well, wait a second, what if there actually is something to this? And because of that, there's no possibility of even having a conversation, which is
Yeah. I
quite
think I
frustrating.
think
Have we
that
gone back to
entrenchment
Headphone?
happens pretty easily,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
I had one
Oh,
experience with a headphone, and the graph didn't match what the graph showed. Therefore, the measurements, nah. Like, it's like, okay, but there's so many explanations for why that's the case. Like, it's like, just let's go just a little bit further and consider.
It's uncomfortable to be uncertain and have doubt about these things. And I I deeply wish there was a pill that would make me forget some of the things I know so I could just go back to knowing less and being more certain. It was a lot more fun that way.
Really?
Um,
I don't know.
I
I
think
in
wouldn't.
some ways, yeah.
I wouldn't do
interacting
it.
with the hobby when
I
it's just
wish.
like a field of products you can buy and try and like you can just
Yeah,
kind
I
of
know what
be
you're.
as critical as you want to of
Do you,
that.
Yeah.
do you also get it nowadays where you'll see a discussion taking place that like 3 years ago or something you would have probably joined in on, whereas now you'd be like, I just shouldn't because
Oh,
it's
all
So
the
much.
time.
like
All
So
the
much.
time. And then
Like,
sometimes I'll
dude,
still
don't.
join in and then I kill the convo,
yeah.
which is no fun. Like I'm aware of the fact that that happens, but I am still a social person and would like to exist in social spaces. A friend of
I'm
mine,
not.
we were in Mark's Wednesday live stream, and Adrian, friend of the program and channel, shouts out to Adrian, was talking about some, I think it's a like a Southern California audio server, and was talking about some of the discussion that goes on there. And I was like, hey man, I would love an invite to that server. And he was like, I'm gonna be real with you. I don't think it would be a productive use of your time. But also, I like my little space where people are discussing cables and amps. And if you go in there, you are going to ruin it. And I was like, dude, fair enough. I respect the hell out of you for telling me that.
Yeah, like, no,
Keeping.
but props to him for just saying that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of people won't. Adrian's a
Keep.
real one.
Yep. Keeping
Boom.
this. Keeping the dirty measurement person, the objectivist, out of his fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mark
There's
says, I probably
definitely
would have gotten bored with the hobby and stopped if I assume, broke out of the naive place.
So this is what I was going to say:
Is
is
the
that
naive place the sequel to the good place?
there's a sense in which I do wish that I could. I think we should all strive to be more like Mark. In
In some ways, definitely.
in many ways, right?
Yeah.
Where he's able to
I'm not
just.
buying a Miata.
I'm not moving to the West Coast.
No, by that I mean we all should be Belroy boys.
Blaine and Andrew, have you seen The Good Place?
Yes.
Yes, I have seen The
Okay,
Good
I was gonna
Place.
say. Wait, Blaine, you haven't seen it? You
I feel
genuinely
like
would.
wait, you
It's a philosophy
particularly
show.
didn't ask
They
me that
literally have
question, and
philosophy
I'm wondering if it's
professors, like,
because
advising on the script.
sorry, what'd you say?
They literally had like philosophy professors consulting to write the script. It's a philosophy show. It's great.
It's okay.
I love how I'm the only one who's watched
It's
that
great.
show.
I like it.
No, I've seen it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Andrew's seen it.
It's okay.
I
you're
love
talking
that you
the one
got
with,
profiled as having watched that show.
No, it's the one with Kristen Bell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I've seen it. Yeah, no, it's okay.
The last-
I just love that Cameron's
wait,
just like
it's-
Blaine and
Ted
Andrew.
Danson, isn't it?
Obviously, Griffin's seen The Good Place.
Ted Danson's in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah.
a bunch of other. Yeah, okay. I know.
Jack.
Speaking of overconfidence
yes,
and
but
finding it.
Andrew has only done measurements, and the review units are going to FC Construct for formal
Yes.
review.
Did you guys see not necessarily just the LTT video on the like little amulet that claims to protect you from harmful EMI, but the company's response to it?
No.
Yes.
That's kind of entertaining. So basically, it's this little amulet thing with a little silicon square thing, and they
By
basically
Russell
paid a
Brand,
bunch
or
of
promoted
Russell
by
Brand
Russell
and
Brand.
The Rock, I think, and a bunch of
Oh
other
yes, I saw the thumbnail.
a bunch of
for the
other
video. I didn't see the
celebrities to
video.
promote this, and it claims to protect you from 5G and stuff like that. They even make one that goes on your phone to stop you from getting hurt by the 5G, but then they've like it doesn't block the 5G, and LTT did a pretty good test set on it. You know, they've got like the EMC chamber and everything, and they showed that it's doing literally nothing. And the company basically responded saying like, no, you're testing it wrong. It doesn't block any of the EMI.
Where have I seen this before?
So that it's no longer harmful. They basically did everything they could to say that no, our buzzwords and marketing aren't wrong. It's just that you can't actually test and disprove any of the things that we're saying.
Skill issue.
But it was kind of fun.
What I found most interesting is their claim that non-coherent radiation is
Yes.
inherently more dangerous for some reason. When now, admittedly, I don't deal in EMF much, but in the areas that I'm familiar with, coherence just reflects the phase relationship between intersecting signals, right? So a coherent radiation would simply mean that it's summed more efficiently, which would presumably fry you more effectively.
Would they also show just with the basic, like, I like how in their response they talk about like the Fourier transforms and stuff, and then they're like, no, you can't use a FFT, a fast Fourier transform, to test it. That's wrong. It's like, okay, well, which one is it? You can't.
They
you can't
only
have this
use
both ways.
they only use real Fourier transforms. None of this discrete time bullshit. You need an
Yes.
infinite time sample in order to understand their work.
Jamie says it doesn't block 5G. It converts it into something good for you. Okay.
I mean,
that
I
is
like
basically
that.
their claim. Yes.
Yeah,
I just
love
ran with
that.
5G being good for me regardless.
Yeah.
Same.
Hobby Talk, just to be clear, that this wasn't like a you're testing it wrong because
Canada,
the
it
results
is.
show that it was like bad, or there's subjective debate to be had. It was no, this is a little piece of. It looked like it could have actually been silicon, although seemed like it was more likely just graphite that did nothing, and it's just complete.
It
Hard
seems
to
like it
just
wasn't
look-
you're testing
people
it
look to
wrong. It's
follow.
that it's untestable.
Yes, they went out of their way to try and give an explanation that basically was like it's not possible to test, so therefore we're right.
But the
Which
thing is, they
also
actually
the
did
explanation
propose
was
that it
not
should be
right
tested with
either.
an EEG, interestingly.
Mm.
Which I presume is just because, and you actually do hear that. I liked that because you see this in audio a fair amount. People will be like, oh, well, what really matters is what's going on inside the brain. So until we're doing brain scans, we can't say if whatever product is good or not. And I'm just like,
Yeah, but
We
like,
have mouths. We can just say what we like.
yeah, but Wittgenstein, private language problem.
well, that actually applies double to
Yeah.
scanning people's brains, though. Like that's the
I mean-
private language argument twice over.
Yes.
If you want to just say like that, because the problem with then is that then you don't actually separate out what's really happening and what's not, because placebo and expectation bias is still a thing. Like I've had debates with people where they're like, but I enjoy the sound of these cables more, and I'm happy with what I got for the money. It's like, okay, fine. Like even if it is literally just because of placebo, fine. That's okay,
What if I
but you
don't
also
believe an
can't then
event is
say that,
intended to
well,
be
I'm
monitored?
experiencing a difference. I'm going to refuse to see whether this is actually a real change it's making or whether it is just me thinking that there is one. Like it's okay to say this may not be real, but regardless, I am happy with the result that I am experiencing for what I paid. That's okay. But it's when you then say, no, I think I'm experiencing something, and so therefore scientifically this must be correct or real.
Yeah, I mean, people really are not comfortable with the idea that reality does not match their perceptions, which I mean makes sense. It's kind of an unnerving premise. Like we're all kind of inured to it at this point, but it's unsettling when you see an optical illusion for the first time. Like the first time I saw the duck rabbit, I
Yeah.
was like, that's fucked up.
I don't trust that duck rabbit.
The
The
ones
duck
that are
rabbit
kind of
is
interesting
fucked
though
up.
are where like there is a difference and it potentially could be audible or just is audible, but people are conflating something that is expensive and is producing a difference for okay, it must be better then. Like there are some cables which are horrendously expensive and they've got like things which will absolutely change the sound. Like there's some really expensive speaker cables that have resistor networks in them. And so depending on, you know, the impedance curve of your speakers, it's going to change the frequency response, but probably make it worse in many cases, particularly with speakers where the impedance curve is going to be very
Okay,
unpredictable.
but have you
Hell yeah.
considered? I've recently heard that Focal is advocating current drive for speakers. And if you add resistors in
Are
series, you are
they?
moving towards current drive. Yes.
I mean, Focal speakers' impedance curves are not like the ones that would be most conducive to that. So that's quite surprising to me. And like name stuff isn't high output impedance, at least not the one that I tested. So that's odd. But I mean, there's other
I
ones
mean,
like
current drive as a concept is odd.
it is. There are certain situations like HD 800 on current drive. I think is fantastic. I really, really like it. But it's also you can just EQ it, but
Mid bass boy.
it's fun. I wouldn't use it all the time, but it's fun. But then there's stuff like, I mean, external clocks are one which I think is quite interesting, not necessarily for the direct audible results, but because of the way in which the product has sort of arisen. Like, people want to spend more money on stuff. They want to find other ways or things they can add to their chain to make it better or whatever. And if they've got a DAC they like and an amp they like, then adding an external clock is the next thing that they can spend money on. But there's like, I mean, Blaine, have 10 megahertz clocks. 10 megahertz can't be divided by either of the rates we use for audio. And so, in the vast majority of situations, using one of these does make a change. It makes it worse. It makes your device perform measurably worse. And
Okay, so on
but
that
there is
topic,
a way
though,
to do it better.
I have another question for you guys, and this is also just sort of like to what's the dark side of the hobby. Um, I keep coming across this notion that we shouldn't be considering products as better or worse, or giving judgments about products as this is a good product, this is a bad product, or this is a competitive product, this is not competitive. Rather, we should just let people have fun with the hobby and just enjoy different
No.
things. So this is what I was going to say is, would we consider this concept part of the dark side of the hobby?
Which
The,
concept?
Well,
the concept that there is no like it's bad to
Oh,
actually judge products to be good or bad, to judge
I
products
mean,
as of having merit or not.
the difficulty I have with that is that typically the people that are like, I don't necessarily disagree with that take. If you want to treat things very sort of lighthearted and just try stuff and see whether you like it, and you don't really want to go any deeper than that, that's totally fine. The problem is that quite often a lot of those people saying that and that other people should be doing that are also having extensive discussions on various forums, going and watching various videos and reviews and stuff, and only taking issue with stuff when it disagrees with their
With
personal
their
preference.
worldview. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I
like
would also say that if anybody is very few people are genuinely doing this if they're claiming to do this, because a lot of people are just gaslighting themselves when they are um sort of claiming to inoculate against any sort of critical judgments or interpretations of products that they might have, right?
I
I
wouldn't
mean, there's
say
people
this
that
is
think
the
that
dark
reviews
side of
shouldn't be negative.
audio.
So what's your take there on that, Griffin? I'm
Like
just
I would just say that it's not the function. Like if they're
but I don't
kvetching
watch
about a
reviews.
reviewer doing that, they
It's
misunderstand
you.
what a review is.
I don't think it's that
Yeah.
they're necessarily kvetching with a specific. Well, certainly they do kvetch with individual reviewers, but I think it's more that they just reject that entire side of the discourse, which is to say, products are just products, and they all have merit of some kind, and it's just whatever you choose to engage with. And as soon as you start being critical of
It sounds
one,
dangerously like the art argument coming back.
Yeah.
well, I'm not even saying they're
I
making
don't
that claim.
I don't feel like that's the dark side of the hobby. If anything, I think it's less so the mindset and more so the fact that people
Well,
um
I'm
would
specifically thinking of
not have a coherent, or not even coherent, or that people just wouldn't be making consumer decisions with all that much
right. So,
thought behind
that's kind
them.
of my point, though, or that's I think the thing that I've come across is there are people who are so into the hobby that they're not thinking of this from a consumer perspective or from a person who may potentially buy a thing perspective. They're just here to try different things, and well, at
Mm.
least they claim to be, right? And then what you see as criticism from them is you're ruining my fun when you say something is not competitive. Oh, you're just ruining my fun.
Okay,
You
so
know,
I
If,
have
if they
so
genuinely mean that, then that's kind of okay, and I understand that, and that's fine. But then, as Griffin said, like, why are you watching reviews? Like,
well, that's
what are
kind
you
of
expecting them to
that's
do?
kind of where I'm
Or
at.
what are
And
you even expecting
Yeah,
a discourse to be?
well, okay,
that's
but
the
yes,
thing.
the
Like,
point of
but
I just have to clarify what this actually is. At least what I think it is. It's a situation where somebody expects a review to not contain judgments about the product, and to me, that's weird.
that's ridiculous. Like,
That's
Yeah,
that's
very
well,
weird.
that's impossible.
but
it's not a
we
review.
think that, but
Well, no, no,
I've
no, 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 no,
increasingly
no,
seen
no.
that. You know,
No, no, like that's just incoherent. Like you can't have a
yeah.
description of something that doesn't involve judgment. It's just whether it's implicit or explicit.
Yeah, and well, and also what like how severe it might be, right? Because like if you're giving kind of a milk toast analysis of a thing, and you're not really willing to be like, um, this is amazing or this is terrible, right? If you're like, yeah, I like it
Well,
or
you don't need to
whatever
use superlatives or even express your emotions on a product or
for it to contain.
anything in
I know,
order.
and I'm right there, of course, but I'm just saying the sentiment that I've seen is it's right in line or adjacent to the folks who say why would if you're going to review something, like why would you ever review something negatively, right? It's a little bit in line with that line of thinking.
I think it's the
But
one thing which I say is when you're spending the amount of money that quite a lot of people in this hobby are spending on stuff, it's unreasonable to expect. Like, if you just want to treat things as I just want to try different stuff and kind of see if I like it, whatever, and I want to be very lighthearted about it, that's fine. It's not reasonable with the amount of money that people are spending on this stuff to expect others not to want to put research on the thing that they're going to be purchasing. Like, how ridiculous would it be if you went to spend 50 grand on a car and you were trying to find out info about like which car should I get, and people were like, I don't know, man, just try stuff, see if you like it. Like that,
Yeah,
no, that's not
it doesn't make
that
sense.
wouldn't.
Yeah,
you
No,
should
I want to
still
know
try.
which car's got good mileage, which one goes fast, which one's got problems. Like, tell
yeah,
me the good and the bad, so I can put my money into the right stuff.
yeah.
I have a question. Are we not? This feels like we're in Goomba land, and I have
What?
added the context image
I
for
will.
this because
I should
Blaine
know.
loves this fucking Goomba image.
I love the Goomba
Sorry.
image.
Blaine does this when he himself is still guilty of Goomba thought.
I mean, yes, everyone is guilty of
I mean,
Goomba
but you
thought.
should know at this point that this hobby is Goomba Land.
Well, okay, no, but look with your special eyes at the Goombas.
Okay.
This is what I'm asking. Are we getting into something where we are synthesizing two separate people have said two things that are incoherent if taken together?
No,
Like
I
maybe
get
there
what you're
are
saying.
people who
I get what
are
you're saying. I'm
affronted by the very concept of discourse on audio.
yeah. No, I get what you're saying. It's just because this is the kind of thing that I'm increasingly coming up against as like criticisms of when I put out negative or critical content. It's like you're an asshole Not because I disagree with you about the judgment about the product, but the fact that you're judging it in the first place.
Chat would like an explanation of Goomba
I'll
Lands.
give them the image.
Pull up the Goomba.
Go to
listener.
Blaine's Twitter.
Just describe it.
I'll
Just-
post the link. There you go.
It's way easier to just post the link. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, but no, I think there's merit to you bringing that up, Blaine. We probably are a little bit in Goomba land right now.
Yeah.
Let's
On
move
that
on.
note, should we move on? Yeah.
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 So the next topic is a little more lighthearted, a little more product focused. What was your worst audiophile purchase? And did you immediately know it was bad, or did you have to learn that with time because you were too busy coping?
It was the AudioQuest Nighthawk, and I returned it immediately.
Okay. You didn't
If you
get
still had that, I'd take that off your hands.
coaxed by the comfort or anything like that?
No, I love the comfort. I thought the comfort was fantastic. I loved the way that it smelled.
What?
It does have a unique
He's
aroma.
graduated from graph sniffing all the way to headphone sniffing.
Exactly.
For me, it was probably the. Sorry.
Gotta be others too. No, go ahead.
For me, it was probably the Beats Pros, just because they are genuinely terrible. But in my defense, I didn't actually buy them thinking that they would be good to listen to. I bought them because I was in the US at the time that Radio Shack was going out of business. And they had them for like some stupid low price. I was like, oh, I can buy these and then just flip them. Little did I know that eBay is flooded with fakes and they are unsellable. So now I have a pair of Beats Pros that I just use for memes, basically.
Got it. Not the story I was expecting, but an interesting one.
The IFI.
Pardon me, iffy.
What's the impedance?
No, it's iFi.
IEmatch. That's another one there. It did do the thing that it said it did. It's just that it increased the output impedance. And I didn't know
I
that.
thought the whole point of it is that it has an LPAD, though, so its output impedance should be relatively low.
It should be. It increases it when you turn it on.
Something.
Yeah, it's
the problem is that if you're using it for IMs,
10 ohm output impedance.
Let me find out what it is. Hang on.
It's higher than you would want it to be for the intended use of IMs.
Yeah, exactly.
Why?
So it kind of defeated the purpose.
Great question.
That's stupid.
Yeah. If it's still the same one that it was the one that I bought, right? Because they had different modes and they had different output impedances depending on that what mode you're in.
My
Those
worst
are very
audiophile purchase was.
tame worst
Wait, sorry.
purchases. Sorry, I was just thinking the you guys, at least other than like the total loss in money here was very low for you too, so that's good.
Wait until you hear about mine.
Let's hear it.
It was not expensive.
It's HD800.
It was no.
Oh, no, it's 3 ohm, sorry.
It was the Philips Fidelio X2 HR.
Oh, okay. No. I definitely had the Philips Fidelio X2. That's also one of mine.
So
Yeah.
the problem and kind of why the second half of this question exists.
I bought it because Tile recommended it. All right.
So that's the thing. Tile recommended it. Zeos recommended it. Ratings recommended it.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I paid $20 for this.
I wonder if
what?
it's
$20.
I wonder if it's
That's a fair price for that headphone.
I wonder
That's a
if it's
very
my
fair
old
price
unit.
for that headphone.
Yeah, my old unit, it eventually made its way onto the various different used platforms.
Did
Yeah,
your
my
old unit
brother's
end up
using
owned
mine.
by a guy named Ass Ketchup?
Could have.
Anyway, the reason the second part of the question exists is because it took me way too long to get rid of it. I straight up early on was just like gaslighting myself into thinking it had the qualities people said it had, like the spaciousness and the powerful bass and the detail and etc. And that was probably my first like 2 weeks of ownership, something like that. And as time went on, the illusions started to melt away. And I realized that, there's something weird in the treble in this headphone that I really don't like. And the clamp is a little strong and the pads are a little stiff. And the channel balance seems really off in the treble somewhere when I collapse the mix to mono. And I guess the reason I bring it up is because it's not always a given that this stuff is going to happen organically. Like I feel like the fact that someone can gaslight themselves into, I guess, the honeymoon period where the thing they just bought is just going to be good and going to be congruent to all of the things people are saying about it online. The fact it can happen at all means that it can happen and not go away for some people.
Well, I mean,
And
the fact that like you have to be at least somewhat self-aware after having gone through that and learned from it. You know, like I just think for a lot of people, they probably just they didn't realize that was going on, that they were gaslighting themselves.
well, yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, it's a lot more innocuous than saying like gaslighting yourself. Like it's more like the honeymoon period, and then it wears off, and then they, it just goes into their collection, and they don't use it much
Yeah,
anymore.
but I think they still. I don't know, man. I know people who. Well, yeah, I know you get.
Well,
into it,
I'm just saying there's in this hobby more delicate and nice language to describe what I'm talking about, and it's I think more normalized than people give credit for. Is that people will buy something they don't like and actually keep it, which is strange to me, but only in 2025. I think in 2020 or 2021, I would have been like, I mean, yeah, it ebbs and flows, Like sometimes I want to listen to something that has a ton of treble grain and a channel imbalance and doesn't fit my head.
So you're saying that you've weaned yourself off copium.
I'm saying that copium is alive and well.
Well, okay, I will.
It's just
there's
not necessarily a bad thing for some people. Like for some
No,
people,
okay,
that's
but
just kind of the
some
truth of
things-
how you experience this hobby, and it's not a problem, and that's fine. I do
some
think
things
it's
are just like channel imbalance are such disqualifiers that like I feel like it doesn't matter if you have avant-garde or esoterica or whatever for the tuning,
They're
right?
just annoying.
They're just
So the thing is, X2HR is not avant-garde esoterica at all. It's just like a slightly brighter take on
No, I know.
Harmon,
I
really.
can't imagine that you would like that at all. Like I just can't. Like
There were things I liked about it, and I think if I went back and listened to it, I would still admit that like
but a
the
channel
mid-range is
imbalance, you'd
probably
have
okay.
to have to disqualify it for that. I don't think
Yeah.
there's
So,
any
but the thing with channel balance is I didn't notice it until I monoed my music, and for a lot of people, I don't think they're doing that test at all.
No.
And I think they probably like
Oh, so you
in some ways shouldn't do that
So for
because
you,
you're likely to
the
notice problems in
the
that
toothpaste
circumstance
was
that
out
you
of the
wouldn't
tube.
notice in normal listening.
I get you. Yeah. Yeah. So the toothpaste was out
Wait,
of the
Mark
tube.
Ryan just bought
because
his third Miata. Bro, you have a problem.
Now,
love
is
Mark
it the one
so
that has the little
much.
swoopy thing at the back? That's the question.
Does it have the back swoopy thing?
Because if not, what are you doing?
No back swoopy thing. Garbage.
Scott says his worst was the Blessing 2. It sounded great, but he couldn't stand having them in his ears for more than 15 minutes. Many
so I
such
said this to
cases
Scott.
with audiophile
Okay.
AMs.
Scott is a particular case.
Yeah, no,
though.
yeah.
Like,
I'm aware of the anatomy of this man's ears. I have data.
Yeah, his ear canal goes like this. Like he has a just right angle in his ear canal that goes like.
No,
it's
sorry.
uncommon.
I just have to address number 47.
Do
What do we have to
do
make
we have
amends
to address
for?
that?
Yes.
Like what? We literally haven't talked
Do
about
we
this
have to
person
address
ever. What the fuck do we have? We haven't done anything.
If the
So
individual you're
What are you
anything
talking
we
about?
say will be taken and
we
made into a
literally
drama
have not
video,
done
so
anything.
we will
Okay,
say nothing.
moving
Talk about this
on.
person. So
Blaine, what was your worst audiophile purchase?
Link silo.
Oh, that was your worst? Oh, was it a software
Yeah.
issue or oh no, it was the RMA,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So the Lynx Hilo, for those not in the loop, is the American equivalent to the RME ADI2 Pro.
It has
Fancy.
EQ on
I
board?
remember this.
It
HILO.
might. It
I
has
don't think it
quite
does.
a lot of features.
Huh,
It.
okay.
I don't remember.
Yeah. This was
frankly,
big, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it was a big meme, and frankly, its ADCs performed quite well. And this was in the era before stuff like the Ivanda and stuff, so it wasn't so
Yeah.
trivial to get a very good ADC and a very clean DAC. And I was like, yeah, well, I'll grab
See,
one of those.
I thought you were going to answer this by saying the 40 clone couplers that you bought and they weren't ideal.
Damn.
Well, you know,
It's
the big
even
problem
using
we
the
had with
right
those
kind
rigs,
of external clock.
Sorry, what, Blaine?
well, the big problem with the clone couplers is that 10 of them, the expensive ones, didn't come with the microphone capsules. Like, and we lost the appeal with Alibaba. Like, that's the big issue there.
Oh,
That sucks.
Yeah. Anyway, no, so that's just that lore. No, but the thing there was a, like, one of the channels had quite substantial distortion on the inputs, and I spent a long time, you know, documenting it. I wasn't as good with electronics at that point, but I was like, yeah, this is definitely a problem. Contacted Blinks. They got back to me relatively quickly and were like, yeah, send it in. And I sent it in. And it took them 15 months to replace the input capacitors that had gone bad, which was the problem. And when it came back, I had obviously long since replaced it, and I immediately sold it. It was sort of a good example for me. I mean, it's not that they were unreasonable, you know. I mean, they didn't charge me. They were, you know, polite, but that turnaround time was really non-functional. Like, it probably would have been better if they actually hadn't done the warranty at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, at least you got it back and just got all of your, well, maybe not all of your money back, but you did sell it and get some money back.
I actually made a profit, hilariously. I bought quite low, so I made like $300, but it was okay. So someone chat says just send a new unit. I bought it used. I wouldn't expect to get a new unit. It's just like if your repair backlog is that long, I appreciate
best
the
to say
effort,
so.
but yeah, it'd probably be better, just particularly because and it's the stereotypical experience with a small company. You email them every month or two and they're like, oh, we're super sorry, we'll get right on that. And you can tell they're probably backed up to high hell and all that. But yeah, that was not a fun time. It was just like, I just kind of want to get this and sell it and get my money back.
What about headphones? What was your worst headphone purchase?
Oh fuck.
HD 800.
HD 600.
I don't know. I got my 600 for like $200.
Stacks?
I think that was an
Didn't you
okay
own
price.
Stacks at one point?
Oh,
did
you
own
own
Stacks.
Stacks?
Yeah.
An SR
Was it L?
207.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel like that wouldn't
I
be a
wouldn't
bad
say-
fit for Blaine,
No.
though.
No,
Oh,
I
that'd be
don't
alright.
think that was a bad purchase. I enjoyed those.
Yeah.
I found them a bit annoying, like in terms of the weird feel, the bad ergonomics, et cetera. But they were
Odyssey
not bad.
LCD2. How do you? Was that one?
Have I ever bought an LCD2? I don't think I've ever bought a functioning LCD2.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure I haven't. That's one thing I'm sort of scraping my brain. Like, I've bought a bunch of headphones that were bad, but they were almost invariably like $100 or less because one of the drivers was broken or something, and I just wanted to dissect them. I'm trying to think of a headphone that I've bought that was bad that I
NTH
actually bought
100?
with the... No, I don't mind that. I like that as a closed headphone. No, I mean, like,
It's a bad headphone.
you're a bad headphone. It's ergonomically quite acceptable and it's cheap. No,
Oh, it's a good headphone because it's cheap. All right.
a cheap closed headphone is what I wanted it for, so it does the job. Okay, actually, I have one. I bought a headphone. You know the actually Griffin may not. Those of us who've been in the hobby longer may remember when Brainwaves and NVX and a bunch of other places. Yeah, they had the HM5.
Yeah, I remember the HM5.
Well, okay, so and the actual it's the Yoga CDH80, and that OEM Yoga had a higher end model, the CD 2500, and some shit gamer brand, you know, white labeled it, and I was like, I'm curious about that headphone. And I bought it. I was like, wow, big fancy metal parts and, you know, milled wooden cups and stuff, and it sounded terrible and it felt terrible, and it was the fit and finish was good, but everything about the ergonomics and mechanical build was terrible. And I was just like, wow, this is a waste of $250.
Sounds
So I
like
think that's the worst one. I think
By
it's
the
called
way,
the Phoenix Aria.
Scott, I want to echo that what you just said about the new Stacks being incredibly disappointing. Was not
Oh,
Damn,
those.
they're that
We've had them
bad?
in Munich, yeah.
If
They
they
were-
actually are intended to sound the way they did in Munich, oh my god.
I think
That
because
was-
someone had some measurements of them, and the measurements did not look like
That's
what
why,
we saw.
yeah,
But
I
the
remember
ones,
seeing that too. I was like,
like,
what's going on
yeah,
there?
but the ones
So-
that we tried at Munich were not good. Yeah,
I remember like the look on Taryn's face when he tried them. He was like, ooh, like he just eaten a lemon.
Someone do the lemon meme with
Zesty.
Taryn.
someone what?
Nothing.
lemon
What, have a lemon party with Taryn? What?
No. There's a meme about like touching something with a lemon and then being all puckered up, like licking a lemon, and then your face is like. Anyway, never mind. I posted pictures in our Discord, by the way, of the thing that I bought. You can kind of see why, particularly in the context of like 2015. I was like, that's kind of intriguing.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Sorry, one sec. Stephen McTowley says, "What do you think of the FIO impedance adapters, which are supposed to reduce the rattling of the FT1 Pro? It's got a
Well,
flat impedance curve."
So actually,
we got to
it
the bottom
doesn't.
of it.
Yeah. No, well, we
It
tested
does
as long
and
as
it
it's sealed.
We got to the bottom of it. It's
Yeah,
just
we were
that the driver
testing
is
some stuff.
excursion limited. So what's going on there is if somebody is playing it at very high volumes or EQing the bass, it's going to reduce the volume threshold for where it clips. The other scenario potentially where this could happen is if there is a high output. Well, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but it would have to be decoupled for this
Yeah,
to
like as in not on your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and also the magnitude of increase from output impedance is really low. Like
It worked out to like a 1.1 dB. Like if you were running it
They're
full current mode, it would be
suggesting
1.1 dB increase. So
Yeah,
I
that
guess the
can't be
answer there would be
responsible, yeah.
an
I don't
impedance
even
adapter
think it
makes
was
no sense.
1.1, was it? It was like 1 dB at most. Because 20
It
log,
was
it was like
1.17
23
if you were running it full current mode, I believe. But the point stands, like an impedance adapter is not going to solve this problem. An impedance adapter is just going to make it quieter, and then you will turn it up again and get
Which solves the
exactly
problem.
where you were.
To be honest, this is the same problem that exists with the focals. Is the I
Yeah.
mean, functionally, it's the excursion limit. The difference with the focals is that they do have a nonlinear impedance, quite substantially in, or the basically, if you run it off a higher output impedance device, it would more substantially reduce the volume threshold for where it would clip.
And in fact, if anything, sorry, but like even if you were running it decoupled, or if you were running a focal or something, using one of these impedance adapters would mean that you get a bump in that bass region, so it would be worse.
Well, okay, so here's actually one
So
interesting
they
thing.
could
about that, though.
actually make an adapter that has that is a slight low down shelf, but I don't think that
Oh,
they
so it's like
would.
an EQ. Like, okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
So the one thing that I'm thinking about with this is those headphones seem to have some sort of integrated leak, because the resonance frequency is, there's no passive filter, right? And there is a subtle bass
At
boost.
least we don't
So
think that there is.
yeah, like from the impedance measurement, it seems that there isn't.
A Zobel
but
network could have that, but that's
Sure,
neither
but
here nor there.
I get what you're saying, but the point is more that because it seems that these headphones are getting their bass boost from some sort of integrated leak, that this could also then potentially be reducing the volume threshold for where it clips, for depending on how that leak is actually achieved. Because when I'm measuring on the rigs, it's consistent, but I don't know if that's because of.
There's only so much excursion you can do, right? With planers, you
it's
hit the
gonna be-
magnets with the moving coil. You either bottom out the dome or you bottom out the coil. So at some point you will hit something. Like there's only so far a motor can go in one direction. The thing that's weird is the claim that an impedance adapter can fix that.
But that was a dealer claim, not necessarily a
FIO claim.
Yeah.
Also, I remembered another shitty headphone I bought once, and I put it also in the chat.
What the fuck is that? Jesus.
It had triangular ear cups. It cost me like $30, and that was too much.
Just to quickly check though, from what he was saying, it sounded like FIO was selling like FIO impedance adapters. Is FIO themselves suggesting that this will fix the issue? Because yeah, the Reddit post, the answer was from a dealer, not FIO. So the dealer was wrong, but that's just the dealer.
I mean, I guess we'll have to see if FIO says
the
that.
issue.
The other thing is, I don't know. I tested this on one unit. So like maybe the volume threshold, the excursion limit threshold is lower on that person's unit.
Well,
I don't know.
And QTS varies, like the
Yeah.
leak will vary, and the leak will change how much it
Oh.
excurses. So it is variable. Like some people will get a different experience than others. It's Jack says, did the FT1 Pro issue only happen if you EQ the bass? No, this
Well,
ultimately is a question of how loud the bass is, period. If you EQ it up, then the threshold for the mid-range level will be lower. If you don't, it will still happen if you're playing loud
I would
enough.
say in practice for people, that's the thing to be concerned about. If you're going to EQ the bass,
we don't
it's
know what the threshold is for some of the people. Like, we don't know if this is a focal clear situation where it's like 107 dB, or if this is like
yeah,
what, you know?
I haven't measured. It's at
Yeah, we have your unit measured, is what I'm saying. We
oh,
don't
for
know
their
these
units. Yeah.
Yeah.
For their units, we don't know.
Mm. Whilst you're looking at that, sorry, I just checked. So FIO does sell impedance adapters, but they fairly correctly state that the main purpose of the impedance adapter is to address the issue that occurs when high-power devices are connected to low impedance, high sensitivity in-ear monitors that can result in excessive background noise.
Which is what you
So
would
that's
use
fair.
it for.
Yeah. So yeah, the FIO doesn't seem to be claiming that this is going to fix anything to do with the FT1 Pro, because from everything we've seen so far, it will not. If anything, it would make it slightly worse.
So, okay. Should we get into the next topic, or should we get into spicy hour, or have we all?
Blaine, do you happen to know the answer to Scott's question?
What headphone? That it was the raw thingy.
Was it the Amanus? I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I mean, that
Raw
wasn't as- that
hibiscus or
wasn't-
something.
I don't remember these stupid names.
I mean, you clearly did. You just
Yeah,
Anyway.
that
I
was
didn't.
the Roller Manus.
yeah.
I literally Googled raw headphones to figure out what it was after I said raw hibiscus or something.
You put together
don't
that and the fail hibiscus.
The what?
Fail, like it's a FAAEL.
That's a great name for a brand.
It's a Chinese brand, I think. They make a nice cable that people like for their
I'm pretty
IEMs.
sure I've never heard of the fail hibiscus. I think that Imanus
like a
just is
drink.
in the same bit in my brain as hibiscus.
They're very different. It's a cheap, inexpensive IEM cable that is prominent in weeb communities.
Oh,
Apparently, it's a
speaking of the
headphone.
dark side of eye.
It is also a headphone.
I do like the next topic though. We should do that before spicy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what will the hobby look like in 5 years? / which headphone brands do you think will do the best in that time?
I was
Apple.
thinking about this one.
Well,
Well,
I do want to say this.
shut up.
This comes from the forum. Unfortunately, I can't name the user because it is just like a string of letters and numbers. It is, as Cameron would put it, a Windows license key of a name.
Based, become ungovernable.
Yeah. So shouts out to them. But
He's a sovereign citizen.
yeah.
But so I wanted to say, before we can answer this one, I think we have to say what headphone brands did the best in the last 5 years, because I feel like that kind of changes what you
Ooh.
answer here. Like,
It's got to be Hi-Fi Man.
Did the best?
does it?
Yeah.
Like they?
In terms of like actual business success, I would think so.
Yeah.
I would say Odyssey.
Yeah, Odyssey.
Oh,
because
okay.
I guess
well-
they were acquired by a very large
yeah,
firm.
I would just say Odyssey. The thing is, though,
And
like,
they grew really far in that time.
Yeah.
and with Hi-Fi Man, like they kind of
Only one
they
good
kept
headphone, though.
releasing, more and more products, just tons of different products that were very, very similar. But then they also released a whole bunch of products that were like the worst things of all time. So
Yeah, but
part of
people
their
kept buying them.
I know.
Hi-Fi Man always did the shotgun approach. Do we not
It
remember
really
when
is the
they
shot-
did
and it's like,
IEMs and DAPs?
how many things can we put on the shelf is really the the strategy there.
Yeah, but my perception, at least, is that it works very well for them. Now, I do think Odyssey is a good example.
I think Odyssey, for sure.
It's just kind of a shame that Maxwell was really the only thing that came out in the last 5 years that was really good.
MM500 came out, but I don't know how much of a.
It's not. I like the
Think about their
sound. It's
mainstream
just not.
success. They
wearable.
also partnered with all those brands like HyperX and whatnot, and made the products for them.
Yeah, the like Mobius OEMing.
And the Mobius OEMs, yeah.
Yeah.
There's quite a few good topics and questions being asked, guys. By the way, if you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, please do go to the forum and post it in the topic thread there, because we do need and want more topics to discuss. We won't be able to get to all of these today, but please do post them there so that we can talk about them in future shows.
I like the one about the humbling audiophile experience.
I have a really good answer to that one.
Yeah.
What?
So same.
Okay, so the question was, what was your most humbling audio file experience?
Oh.
And he says it took him way too long to discover that a Killerbuck IM had a bad driver with not subtle implications. For me, and this is one of the reasons why I kind of go on about, like, the fact that placebo and expectation bias can be such a powerful factor. I was testing like whether I preferred a particular EQ profile on or off. And I sort of moved my mouth over the button to turn it on and off and stuff. And I was closing my eyes and just like listening, clicking. I was like, yeah, this one does this better. But then there's quite a noticeable decrease in performance here. So I was doing that. And then I opened my eyes. My mouse wasn't on the bloody button. Nothing was changing. But like I was hearing a drastic change because I was expecting to hear one. And at that moment,
but I had SEO on.
Oh my God.
Oh.
And yeah, like I was shocked at how much of a difference I was experiencing that was clearly just not there. And that was quite humbling. So I think people talk about like, no, I'm experienced enough or smart enough to get outside of, the effects of placebo or expectation, but no one is.
Well, at the very least though, you are, I would say being
I don't
aware
have a
of
blind
them.
spot in my eyes anymore. I'm experienced enough. I can see everything.
No, but I do think it matters that you are able to apply the scrutiny to yourself, right? Whereas I think for a lot of people, they will just take whatever that pill is and be like, yeah, no, there is a difference, right? Like you've gone through that, and it's caused you to require things like ABX, to be able to,
like. This is why I do that stuff just in my own testing now, because I know from experience how much of an effect just the expectation or just awareness of two things that you're comparing can have an influence. It wasn't just about the fact that like I didn't realize. It was about the fact that there was such a profoundly obvious difference that was being heard that did not exist. And so, yeah, it was really humbling, but I'm glad that I had that experience because it showed me, because up until that point, I kind of like, obviously I was aware of expectation bias and placebo and all these issues and stuff. I didn't realize how much of a problem it can be.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad I had that experience, but it was very humbling. Yeah.
For me, it's been just the times that I've been like wrong about things like the time domain stuff, and then having had conversations with Blaine where I realize, oh, all of that is wrong.
I do want to say I actually am quite interested in the question that we actually have here. I love this question, but I feel like maybe we should make this a next week topic or an after this one, because I actually do want to talk about what the hobby will look like in 5 years. That one is easy. It's going to be pretty much the same, but worse. But I think I'm more interested in what brand will do best in this time. Because that's an interesting question.
Shelve it.
Well, I mean, it's not shelving it really because it wasn't supposed to be here.
Wait, what?
You want to get to the current topic?
Blaine. Yeah, I want to get to our actual topic and then do the humbling thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So
got it.
Yeah. So So what's your answer to this question, Blaine?
Well, if we assume that Odyssey did the best, right? Like assuming that we're taking my framing of firm gets bigger, achieves its goals, yada yada. I think I'm really 50-50 on this one, but I think it could be Moondrop.
Oh yeah, I agree. And
I don't know if it's. I think either Moondrop is it's almost peak now, or it's just going to keep going, right? Like it's hard to say whether they'll be able to break out of the sort of chi-fi ghetto. Mm-hmm. But I think if they do, they could actually be Odyssey level breakthrough into mainstream consumer stuff, and that would be, I think, their probable what they want. What do you guys think?
I think It's going to be Fio and not Moondrop.
Mm.
Good answer.
Fio has made waves in the areas that are frankly a lot harder to break into and be notable in.
I think the next product is going to tell us a lot about the direction that they go, because the recent stuff has been way better than the stuff from before.
Yeah, I don't know. I think across the board, they've been improving over the past 2 years. And like obviously we see the most clear examples now with the FT1 and FT1 Pro, which are very important releases for headphones. Like
what about don't they have that DAC amp thing?
They have a bunch of them, but those have been coming out pretty steadily, like in the Q and K series for the last few years at this point. And you know, the people who are into that stuff have been saying this for a while. Like we've been telling or asking Terran to carry Fio stuff for at least a year now, because there was notable desire on the part of the people who follow that stuff to buy Fio.
Yeah.
Because they have a few really good options at fair price points with good features that work. I think the fact that they have displayed that they can make a headphone that is competitive with like not to mince words, like the kind of gatekeeper of audio quality of this hobby, which is like the 6 series in terms of like price to value performance.
Yeah.
The fact that they can compete with those things is tough. Like it's very, it doesn't just happen. Many brands have tried.
I think it will be interesting.
If Fio's able to make, there's one particular product which I think I've talked about on the show before, and I don't know why no one else has done it, but Fio clearly is wanting to, but just hasn't quite gone as far as actually doing this yet. If they make the next Go XLR, that immediately puts them into like massive public conscious. Like that product itself will do well, but then just the brand growth that will stem from that. I think Fio is probably one of the only companies that, because they've clearly gone into like targeting gaming audiences more with some of their more recent products. Like they've got is it K7 or some like gaming thing, but it doesn't have like a XLR mic and it doesn't have all the extra features and stuff. If they basically just made a Go XLR, that I feel like could probably accelerate them massively. And I feel like Moondrop, whilst I wonder how much their growth can go if they are not targeting more consumer sections like True Wireless and stuff a little bit heavier. Because at the end of the day, there's only so many people that will buy IEMs or headphones, like expensive over-ear headphones for that matter.
I also think Moondrop's marketing is actually a bit of an albatross for them.
It is, yes.
I think it vastly limits their mass market appeal, but it does give them the kind of consistent fan base or consumers, regardless in this space. But this is a pretty small market. Fio does not have that albatross.
Yeah, but I don't think that Fio has, like, up until recently, the fake cassette player thing, I think, is the first Fio I could see normal people buying. Like, Fio has always been pretty firmly in the hi-fi genre, if you will, or the enthusiast genre.
Sure.
And I haven't seen a ton of things. Like, there are Moondrop IEMs that people could be recommended, people who are normal. That really hasn't been super true of Fio.
I think that's largely a Kryn effect, though.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But I mean, like, Kryn is a real effect that exists.
Oh, no, absolutely. And like, I don't think Moondrop would have a chance at being this company if it wasn't for Kryn. But
agreed.
I think there's a reality where Fio becomes that company, maybe also because of Kryn. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Like, I think a lot of it will depend on whether they can do industrial and product design that is more approachable. Like with Moondrop, the Blessing 3 with the DSP cable.
Oh, but that's just the Dusk. The
Dusk.
Yeah.
I hate their naming. I know it's a Kryn thing, but I hate it. That one, like, you know, praised by Linus Tech Tips, praised by, you know, this or that media place, had its issues, obviously, but that's sort of a thing where that has meaningful crossover appeal to premium normies in a way that I don't actually think the FT1 does.
So what premium normies is a different demographic than I think FIO would have most of its overlap in, where I feel like FIO would have more overlap in the gamers, which is kind of speaking to what Cameron was
Yeah.
talking about.
I think Moondrop has that overlap as well, though.
Yeah, they don't have as
Really?
many products that actually cater to it though.
I'm just
I could
as
see
far
them
as the
do they
exposure
have
on
that vertical
given
in
channels that cover that stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we're talking specifically the products, sure, that's true. It's more about the marketing trends, which I completely
Mm.
agree is they've sort of pigeonholed themselves with the whole cartoon child thing.
anime thing. Yeah, that's.
I
don't
personally
know.
feel that in 5 years, honestly, the true wireless market's going to be growing massively. Apple is probably still going to be leading that, both for brand image reasons and for genuine engineering reasons. AirPods are genuinely great, and we know that Apple's working on some pretty interesting stuff. But also, I feel that spatial audio is going to be a bigger thing in 5 years' time.
Yeah, I
And
would have
to
said
a
that 5 years ago too,
great
though.
That's fair. Yeah, that's probably true. But to some degree, that necessitates head tracking. And for that reason alone, I feel like True Wireless has an immediate advantage that other product categories don't.
I'm going to push back on this one. I don't think True Wireless will grow substantially in the next 5 years. I think True Wireless has already hit pretty much market saturation because I never, ever see anyone with wired earphones anymore. Anytime someone's got something in their ears on public transit
do.
or whatever, it's a TWS.
I saw it just the other day. And what's weird is that they recognized me, and I had to, had to do
Well,
that
okay,
awkward thing.
but that's a freak.
Yes,
Yeah.
that is a weird person.
Hey, same
Yeah.
same thing when I
Did
see
he
people
have
with
the
bulletproof, I
brick of
turn the other way.
gaps and stuff as well? Though?
I kind of agree with Blaine here. And it's not that, I mean, it might have hit market saturation. I think it's more so the fact that it's already a technology people know about. They know what it does. And if they wanted it, they would be using it. I think there's at least one or two decent enough true wireless options that anyone buying an IEM can buy a true wireless IEM instead at basically any price point. And, the people in this community largely don't, and the people not in this community largely do. And I think that's probably going to remain the same, even if,
So this is
AirPods.
predicated
I
on
actually have a hot take here.
this is
What's up?
predicated on basically the demographic or the communities not changing in their demographic sizes, if that makes sense.
I mean, do you see the audiophile segment growing?
Well, certainly the IEM segment has in recent times. In the last 5 years, I would say the IEM segment has.
Has it
Also, is that-
grown or has it gone more online and more into spaces?
I think it's grown.
Where a bunch of people.
I think that's been
gather.
the
I do
large.
think
This is
it
just
we
has
know it has grown demonstrably just from
Yeah.
sales figures. Like,
yeah.
I don't think that the hi-fi overall sort of like high-end audio market is on an upward trend. I think there's a lot more proportionally people buying headphones, whether it's new people coming in and just buying headphones or people that were into speakers choosing to buy headphones. But I mean, speakers are on a
Retiring,
downtrend.
moving into shared housing, yada yada.
Yeah, like the speaker section of the market is getting smaller and looks like it's going to continue to get smaller. The headphones section seems to be growing at the moment, and that's probably due to a number of reasons. But
whether that's like localized specifically to the wired headphone crowd, I don't know.
Right.
Well, so here's my take on the wireless thing, right? Like we saw this. We talked to the. I guess he's the head of Noble now, or is he like managing Noble?
He does the marketing, I think.
Right.
okay,
And he brought by some of Noble's TWS, and I remember thinking at the time, I was like, this isn't a product that really is going to ever have a strong place in the market. And the same thing with the Odyssey, whatever they were called, the Euclid or whatever. This whole thing of true wireless audio.
That was
Wasn't that?
Nope.
Nope. You're
Oh, did
thinking,
Odyssey not do a TWS?
They
Nope.
did the thing with around the.
They did the neck band for the
neck
LCDI
band.
4,
Yeah.
but that's not true wireless.
Fair enough. Maybe I don't think of Hi-Fi Man then. But
yeah, they have
whenever
the
I see this, I'm
Savanar.
like,
yeah.
whenever I see this, I'm like,
Oh.
this is a product that doesn't actually have a market. Like audiophiles don't like the idea of true wireless, and frankly, for a product that expensive, the reparability issues of true wireless and the finite life
Well,
that
but
a
but that's
battery
not
that
that's not really the point. They're trying to break into the mainstream by
well,
putting these products into the market.
But they're
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 trying.
never going to,
They're
because
never
they're
going
not
to.
gonna.
they can't compete
I
in the
agree with
marketing, and
you.
they
I'm just
can't
saying
compete in the features.
I agree, and that's the problem. But I mean, it's
I just think
oh,
it's a dead end for all the hi-fi companies that are trying to get into it.
there
Like, I
there
think
there
that
are
that's
some
one of the
exceptions,
cases.
and you see products like the Maxwell come out, and it becomes this lightning rod for a company. I think they're trying to,
Okay, but
There wasn't
Gamers,
an
man.
AirPods
The
of gaming
gaming market
headsets,
is
though.
okay.
I mean,
Here's another example. Focal. Do you think they did well with the Batiste?
No.
no.
yes,
You would be
yes.
surprised.
I mean, I know what the sales figures for the Batiste are in the US.
I mean, the Batiste is, as far as those brands getting into wireless products, that's probably one of the more successful ones out there.
I would agree. I think that
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
all of them, the Batiste is one of the
It's
most
probably
successful
yeah.
endeavors.
Yeah. So they're
That said,
trying to chase that because they feel it has that kind of potential to cross over into a mainstream.
yeah, and I
And
think they're wrong.
the deck is stacked against them. I mean, I would agree with you. I think that it's like, how are you going to compete with, especially when it comes to TWS? How are you going to compete with AirPods? Right? Like that's
Yeah, I think it's easier for over ear than in
Yeah.
ear.
So, like,
and Mark
thing
says it
with
too.
the-
Like
the Max-
Batiste could be sold in airports.
It is. It is
successfully.
sold in
It is-
airports
yeah,
successfully. Yeah.
that's it. That's it. You put it in some
No.
of those places that you can put those more kind of like luxury or lifestyle type things. People will buy them there.
Jack says they cannot buy space in major shops. They definitely could. It's just that the value of having a Batiste display in Best Buy is pretty low, comparatively speaking. Like, the average Best Buy consumer is not going to buy a Batiste. So, like, even the average person looking to spend
Oh,
on
right. But in that
wireless
sense,
headphones can buy a
I
Batiste.
think that there is slightly an incorrectness to the take that they would have to try and compete with those brands that are in those stores because they're pricing them like way higher.
They
and
are.
they're trying to hit a different audience with this, right? Like they're not trying to
They
hit.
are.
Yeah.
But
So
the thing is,
and I think Noble would try and do the same thing with what I can't remember the price of it, but correct me if I'm wrong. But the price
They
of
would.
that was pretty high as
Yep.
well.
they had like
I
a
think that-
$2,000 one and a $700
yeah,
one.
like
I
I think they're trying to go after a totally different. They're trying to go after that crowd who would potentially be interested in the audiophile side of things because they have some sort of audiophile sensibilities, but they don't realize that like their qualification for any of these products is wireless in the first place. So they're trying to solve the discoverability problem by playing in that arena, right?
Yeah, but the
I
thing
think that's
is,
what's
this
going
is
on.
aiming for a group that only hypothetically exists. It's the people who want a true wireless rather than a conventional audiophile product, and who are apparently insensitive
I-
to the quality issues
I
inherent to
don't
any of
know
the
that that's
non-major
I,
players
I
there.
don't know.
I
that
think it's a
that's the
very
market.
small market. I don't think it's a non-existent one. Like I think
Yeah.
there's definitely a market of either audiophiles who need everything to be audiophile, including the TWS that they need to use sometimes for convenience reasons.
Well, you
Or
also have
there's
to
like
recognize
the
people are
kind of
gonna buy
nascent new audiophile, or someone who just has a lot of money
Yeah,
and wants
that's
even their
it. It's
TWS to
people
be
who have-
blingy.
people who have more money than again, it's not just people who have more money than sense, but people who have the expectation that you get what you pay for and are like, yeah, I'm going to spend $2,000 on some nice wireless IEMs. They're not at all online in the audiophile world or even
Yeah,
offline.
they
They're
just
not even
Google most
considering that.
expensive true
They're just
wireless
that
earbud
and or they're
find
walking
it.
in the luxury section of whatever where there happens to be this kind of thing and they're like, okay, that must be good, so then they buy it.
I'm
I
confirmed
really
in my
think that
stance-
these companies are making a mistake by trying to target the general public seeking a luxury option that
Well, that's
isn't
the thing. I
Apple
don't
or
think they're
whatever.
trying to target the general public. Because if
But I
they
think
did,
it's
they would have to
mistaken to think
compete with
that-
the Apple and the Bose and the
But-
Sony, and they can't.
Like Audacity did very successfully, I don't get why these companies don't try and target gamers more. Like there's, it
Yeah.
seems like it's such low hanging fruit because
targeted
most of the
gamers.
no, but like seriously, most of the gaming headset options are genuinely terrible. Not only that, but most gamers kind of know that they are terrible. But then there's not many of these companies that actually go and put out a good gaming headset. Audacity did it, and it bloody worked. And
Not
so
only did
no
it
one else has
work,
been like,
it,
hey, maybe
it,
we should
it
try
gave
that.
a signal to a lot of the other manufacturers that like the people in kind of the gaming market are susceptible to being marketed based on
Quality.
sound quality.
It's like, okay, imagine this. Imagine if Theo sold the FT1 Pro with a connected microphone
Or
and
FT1,
like
FT1, non-pro.
or FT1 with a connected microphone in a bundle with like their gaming thing.
I gotta say, I'm
I
not
Why
a
don't you
fan of
do
the,
that?
I'm not a fan
I
of the
don't
cups.
I don't think
Cups are
that
annoying.
would sell as well because I think gamers are more features driven than you might think.
Yeah,
Potentially,
this
which
is
is
true.
also why I
The
mentioned the
Maxwell
Go
has the
XLR.
low
If they just
latency,
made a Go
wireless.
XLR,
Yeah.
So
like,
no, but I mean, like the thing with which makes the Maxwell distinct. Well, there's two things. One, Odyssey was chaotically trying to be a gaming brand for quite a while before they really hit it out of the park. Like the first of their wireless headphones was not good. The second of their wireless headphones was not good. The first of their
yes, but that's
collabs
because
with
they
another
weren't
brand
good.
was not good. But
Like,
they
I'm not saying just
Shankar
make a
clearly
product for the sake
saw.
of making a product. I mean, make a good product.
Yeah, take
Odyssey
enough
made
swings
products that were
and
either
maybe you'll hit.
bad or $5,000.
But the thing
So-
is that they saw a space that was weak in the market, and that's the thing. Like there wasn't a good headset, and now with a Maxwell there was. And I think that in a world where the Astro A90, the current one, existed, the Maxwell would have been,
A50?
or say A50,
Whatever
sorry,
the-
the A50 would
yeah.
have been so much less significant because like
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
tried the new Astro, it's surprisingly good. It's not perfect, obviously, but I don't think that the Maxwell would have been a holy shit moment in that world. And so, I
Right.
think that
So you're saying the Astro is bright as shit.
No,
Fuck yeah.
no, it's tilted
wow,
DF.
okay.
It's
Okay.
I just have a thing against Astro because for the longest time, a lot of the time whenever you talk to people about like source gear or whatever, they'd call it a mix amp. I'm like, it's no, that's not what that. Okay, sorry.
Well, to be fair, the mix amp had a reason to have that name, and it's that it could mix together
Yeah.
like multiple sources, which
Yeah, no, it
was
was
a
an
cool
interesting
thing
thing.
when it came out. But yes, it was very annoying.
It's just that everyone then called any like DAC
Headphone
amp
amp.
or any source gear product a mix
Made me
amp.
want to
and it's
shoot myself.
Yeah. Well, okay, but
I-
speaking of which, though, the finding the holes in that market, Shit Audio has been going after that for a long time with their
But
products.
they've
too, haven't they?
still okay.
They still don't make the right
and
one.
This is one of the reasons why the Go XLR was successful and why so many of these other gaming focused products are
Yeah.
not. Is that they don't put an XLR mic input on them. They all use
let the
3.5
record
mic.
reflect, I have been lobbying for this for 3 years as a headphones.com product.
Well, you could just make it.
I mean, that would be kind of it would be very difficult to make on the like scope of a Go XLR type product, but
You might be
the
surprised.
reason that the shit gaming stuff, I don't know what the sales numbers are like, but the reason why you don't see it being talked about everywhere is because it doesn't have an XLR mic input.
There's
Go
actually
XLR
one
was-
chip. Sorry, never mind.
There's no one
yeah,
what? Sorry.
definitely.
There's a way to make something like what you're describing much more cheaply than you think, even
What's
at
that?
our scale. I don't
Okay,
want to
but
say that because I don't want to
yeah,
empower our competitors.
Okay, but getting back to the topic at hand, like, unfortunately, my answer for this is kind of similar to the flippant offhand remark that Blaine made at the very top of the segment, which is that it's going to be like this, but worse. I don't see. I haven't seen
But
much
worse.
improvement in any brand
way?
except for Fio over the last 5 years. So I'm kind of skeptical of anyone else coming to market with anything truly interesting.
I think Sennheiser has gotten better.
My answer to this?
Consumer?
No,
Yes.
they have.
I don't think you
Okay.
realize how bad it was.
They have aspirationally
In the
gotten
last
better.
5
I'll
years?
put it that way.
How have they gotten better? I'm genuinely
They
curious
haven't released an HD700.
Or 8.
Oh,
Nothing
just
that
because
they
they're
have
not
released.
releasing as much bad things.
Yes,
They're just releasing kind of mediocre things.
their
the
IEMs
6
are much less terrible than they used to be.
The 660
Sennheiser
S2
has
is just a
gotten
slightly
better.
worse 650, right? Like, I mean,
Okay, but that's so much improvement from where it was in like the mid 2010s.
Yeah.
You know, it needs to be said that this is legitimate improvement and should be recognized.
Yeah.
And it does kind of make me have to rethink what the other brands are doing. Actually, this might be a hot
I'm
take,
sorry,
but
I
I think
missed this. Can you repeat it again? I was typing a message. I really apologize.
It's okay.
no, go ahead.
Well,
That Sennheiser's
Cameron wants the repeat.
Yeah,
So
Sennheiser.
Yeah, no.
You're
So
saying
I
that
was
Sennheiser
saying
got
I hadn't
better.
seen much improvement, and Blaine said he thinks Sennheiser has actually improved within the last 5 years. I was incredulous, but he framed it as they stopped releasing as much bad things, not that they have been releasing good things, which is fair. It
That's
is
fair.
improvement.
My answer to this is actually Bayer Dynamic. Bayer Dynamic is going to be the ones to. No, I'm just kidding. It's clearly going to
Okay.
be Grado.
Bayer is one of those companies that I feel like is perpetually on the very verge of going fucking blockbuster in the gaming
It's true.
segment,
It's true.
and they just step on their own balls every single time.
Yeah. That's exactly what it is.
They're like so optimally placed for it in so many ways, and it just never happens.
Yeah.
Okay, actually though, I do think Focal will probably do something big in the next 5 years.
I think so too. I think they're going to probably do something with that wireless platform that they have and make something.
The fact that they're the only brand that has, like, as a consumer headphone, seemingly, like, if not branched out completely and successfully penetrated that market, like, gotten the closest out of any of the audiophile brands that have tried to.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that this year their big release was basically their least expensive headphones yet, and don't at me, they're probably their best headphones.
They've just made consistent improvements for what headphones should be.
Yeah.
Like the wireless part of it. I mean, yeah, obviously there are still many improvements to make. Like I'm not going to say that these are perfect, but they've gone in the right direction. Especially if you think about the trajectory from where they started with like the Stellia and the Allegia,
Yeah.
to go now to the Azuris and the Lenses and the Audinies, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it speaks to them thinking a little bit more holistically about headphones and not just catering to what an audiophile would say they want, and instead
that's
looking
it.
deeper to what, like, they would actually want but not even know they want. Like,
It's
feel a
making
hot take
products that are
building.
just generally more competent and better, like, theorized and better conceptualized for a much wider audience rather than the ultra niche thing that's only going to serve a very specific audience.
yeah, not without their missteps. Like, as
Of
much as I
course.
love the color of this thing, I actually think it was probably not a good idea for, like, the market appeal
No,
of the space that it
That's
is
a fucking
existing
terrible
in.
color. No.
I love the color. I just think it was not the most shrewd move as far as, like, making sure as many people as possible will buy it. I just have seen a lot of people saying they would buy it if it wasn't for the color. But it's a pretty easy
I'm right
lesson
there.
to learn.
I mean, you can
And
get the lenses, right? That's a better color. By the way, Blaine Deluxe is asking if we get another HD800 drop test.
Please don't.
I mean, have we not run this joke into the ground by now?
I don't think we need to. I think we
yeah,
have.
don't actually break them by
There are,
doing
like-
it every week.
Eventually
it's
it
not
will
actually going
break.
to break.
I think eventually
It's
it will
not.
if you do it enough.
I mean, the thing that will break is the connectors. If I unplug the cable every time, I would confidently do that on a weekly basis. And so do you want to know what's going to fail first? I can already tell you. There's a little metal clasp, or like a little clip that holds in a ball bearing that's part of the detanting system for the headband. And
Yeah,
that
I
will
know.
bend eventually.
Yeah.
But it's very easy to bend back. And if it broke, it would be trivial to make a new one. Like I'm not worried about throwing the HD800. It's just like the bit gets old at some point.
No, you got to
There's
throw
a
it
couple
at
of
people.
people in chat. Sorry, going back to what we were talking about a minute ago, talking about how there just needs to be a mic interface with a more powerful headphone amp. Companies have done that. Topping did
this.
The point is that that's not
Spicy hour,
what
guys.
actually will. Oh yeah, we'll
Just
just
because we only have
okay.
Spicy half hour. Sorry, go ahead, Cameron.
GoXLR was successful because it did all the silly, kind of unnecessary stuff that gamers actually want. Someone just does that again, it'll sell.
They targeted gamers.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
So
there was a couple from earlier in the show which I saved because they were quite good. Hang on.
Okay.
Can I leave
Blaine
with
has
my
had
hot
one
take
cooking, though.
please off? Yeah.
Oh yeah, go for it.
Well, Blaine has a hot take now.
Yeah. No, but I think that I actually think earnestly, and this is probably going to be unpopular, I think that Focal is probably going to go downhill in the next 5 years.
Interesting.
I don't think
Interesting.
that they're going to be able to compete in the sub $500 price space. I think they're going to try to, and I don't think it's going to go
Oh,
well.
okay. I see what you're saying. You think that they're going to misappropriate be incorrect with what they're targeting.
Yeah, I think that they're going to release. Well, I think that that's where they should be targeting, right? Like Focal doesn't have an HD 600 competitor, and they should. And I think
Not
they're
at
going
that
to
price,
try
though.
to. Well, yeah, I mean, if it's not at that price, it's not really a
It's not,
competitor, is it? Like they have things that compete with the HD 600 for twice the money, and that's not a
Yeah.
good. That's not a good fight to be in.
Yeah.
So no, but I honestly think that based on how their pattern of releases has gone, I think that they're going to have a at least not great few years as they try to expand into lower price spaces in the market. And honestly, I think that if they're probably going to do an IEM or something, and it's probably going to be bad, right? Like that's going to
That would
be
scare me if they tried to do an IEM for them, at least. Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
So like, but it would be logical given that they are quite successful where they are right now in the market to try to expand into the other niches.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's going to go super well. So that's my hot take.
Yeah.
You know, we'll see what happens with their next few releases, because again, it's like I was saying before, it kind of is telling for how various companies, like whether or not they are following the science, whether or not they are improving in the right ways, that kind of stuff. And also, if you look at, we talked about this before, but like, it's kind of remarkable. I mean, it's crazy that we would highlight Sennheiser as being one of the companies that's probably going to do well, not because they've made amazing stuff in recent times, but because they haven't fucked things up
Well, I
as
mean,
badly as they have in the past.
the
It's like
IE200
that
was
shouldn't be
fine,
the story.
right? Well, no, the IE200 was fine. The
Not so
HD
it's QC issues.
660S. Yeah, I mean that's what else is new. But no, like the HD 660S2 was less objectionable than the first one, right? Like Sennheiser has made slow movements towards better. And that's
still not better than their headphones from like 20 years ago.
I mean, but the thing is they can still sell their 20 years ago headphones, and there's nothing that really beats their 20 years ago headphones anyway. So
How long did the 8XX come out? How long ago?
That's a drop product.
I want to say 6 years, but I could be wrong.
No,
If
that's
the
like
8X
2 or 3 years, dude.
No.
Yeah, like 2.
3?
Yeah.
It's like 3
Can't
years
count
ago,
that.
maybe.
Really?
I
Yeah.
think so.
But that
It's
was
like
that was a mass drop
2021,
product, right? So
2022.
that I mean, can you
It's
really put the
definitely not
blame?
2022.
Can you put the No, that's not that long ago, dude. 2020
It's
to
definitely
2022.
not. I'd say 2020, maybe 2021. It's definitely not 2022.
Okay. Well, that
Well,
is
we
a
can
that is a mark against their last 5 years.
I mean,
And
that one was
frankly, I
not
think
their fault.
I actually think the biggest disappointment when it comes to Sennheiser of the last few years, and where I'm skeptical we'll see improvement.
2021 is the answer. November 2021. So it is basically 2022.
Got it.
No, yeah, basically 2022.
Where
was
I don't
announced
see
in
them
November.
wanting or having any kind of vision on improvement is actually their true wireless segment. Like that didn't go through the kind of change that their wired IEM lineup did, where they basically, I mean, seemingly just tuned things to look good on Critten's database, which did make for an improvement.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't see that happening to their consumer segment. So I don't see like them becoming what I want, which is, more of a household name. Something I could like more happily recommend to like my mom, my partner's mom.
Yeah, it's funny. Out of all
instead
these
of an
brands, I would
AirPod or
say
something like that.
Sennheiser is the more household name out of all of them.
Of the audiophile brands, it has the
But
most
I would
penetration.
never recommend the actual consumer
Oh
facing
no,
like
it's tough
IEMs
too.
of theirs
Yeah,
to someone else.
It's tough.
Yeah, it's
yeah.
I was saving one from earlier, and this was when we were talking about overconfidence and people. And some of it was about interpretation of data and stuff. And Hartiu said people are very capable in describing subjective perceptions, and they're clear as day to them, which I think is a very spicy take in terms of people's subjective descriptions being clear and accurately understood by other people.
but that's not what was said.
Can you repeat the
So I think
sentence?
People are very capable in describing subjective perceptions, and they are clear as day.
So the descriptions are clear as day, is what he's saying.
Yes.
Are people capable of describing their subjective perceptions? I don't know that
No,
they are.
I
No.
don't think they are. That's the point.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying I think that's the
This
spicy
is a
take.
hard question to. I mean, this is testable, right? But I don't actually know of the results of such tests. Like,
Well, what
in
do you? How do you?
theory, I guess.
What does good mean here? Like that's are capable, right? Like they do it lots, but that doesn't mean that what they're writing is necessarily a good fit with. Well, the other side of it too is like, are their perceptions consistent?
Well,
You know?
if their
Yeah.
perceptions don't have to be consistent for their descriptions to be accurate, that would just mean the descriptions would have to change as the perceptions change. The thing here is like, is the problem that we have that people's perceptions are very fluid, or that people's descriptions are very bad? And that's a hard one. It is probably possible to nail that down. I don't know that. I don't know of the data on that, but I feel like that's more of an empirical question and one that I'm uncomfortable opining on without looking
Yeah.
into behavioral shit.
So my sense of it is like when you talk to people who are very much on the like deep audiophile, anti-measurement side of things, there is if you basically give them the benefit of the doubt, there is a there when it comes to what they are trying to communicate, right? Like not regarding the repudiation of measurements focused evaluators, but I mean specifically when they're actually talking about the products that they're reporting on. There is a there that seemingly is, they're at least intending it to line up with what their perceptions are. But I think the issue is that so much of it is affected by the copium with which they are wielding. That you don't really get the best indications of what their genuine perceptions are of these products.
I mean, there's certain instances where it's almost like the thing is like, that sign can't stop me because I can't read. But it's not even that. It's well, that can't stop me because this sign technically can sort of be interpreted in any way that I like. Which happens a
Yeah.
lot.
Well, and that's the other side of it too, is that subjective descriptions are often so couched in private language that it's completely
So what does musical
unintelligible
mean?
to anybody. Yeah. Unless you are up on the lexicon for every individual, for the individual specifically you're engaging with, because it's not even about the audiophile lexicon at that point. It's about what
Yeah,
it's about the meaning that person is assigning to the words that they're using, which could be totally different as far as
exactly. Like there are certain people which I can have a discussion with, and through purely subjective descriptions and stuff, I can genuinely get a good picture of how something sounds. And obviously, there's cited and
you've built
expectation
up a
bias
rapport
issues,
with
but
that
like
person.
I go and listen to that, and I do experience something which is pretty much how I sort of expected it to, based on what they told me.
Exactly.
There's other people that will then use the same terms and descriptions, but I have no idea what the thing's going to sound like, or it could sound completely different from what I'm understanding them to be trying to say. A lot of that is just, like, because the people that I talk to more often, I'll get a better picture of how they describe stuff, as you say, private language and stuff. So it's not like it's a unsolvable problem, I guess, to put it broadly. But broadly speaking, it is a problem.
It is still a problem. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
I find it easier to talk to people in the audiophile community compared to a normal person, perhaps narrowed down to this group compared to the Headphone community, scientifically and philosophically.
This is just saying that you have autism and have an easier time communicating with people with autism.
Jesus Christ, Blaine.
There is empirical evidence on that one. People with autism have an easier time interpreting the emotions and attitudes of people with autism.
I know, but you can't just say that about someone else. It's not nice.
I mean, am I wrong?
You very well may be wrong.
But I think that there's
that agrees with me.
Well, there's something missing here, which is the assumption that you wouldn't find autism on Headphone and other places, because you definitely would.
Yeah, there's definitely. Oh my god, my voice. There's definitely some of that on Headphone as well.
I think it's
I
pretty
think
normal
on
to enjoy interacting with people in your hobby space more than
Yeah.
people who are not in your hobby space.
the issue, I
I
mean, I mentioned
maybe
earlier, but
for
the issue
you.
I have with Headfire is just you can't actually have a real discussion.
Yeah,
It's
that's the
nowadays a
problem.
lot of just people defending their
Yeah.
particular preference or purpose.
Nowadays, it's been that
That's
way
right.
for at least as
Why I
long as
left.
I've been in the
That's why I
hobby.
stopped using it. I couldn't. But Griffin, I have to like you enjoy engaging with people who are in your particular hobby. I enjoy engaging with some people in the particular hobby. You know?
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
find some pleasure in the blood sport of it all.
Oh, you
It's not
find
even blood. Where's the blood sport? Like, am I the only one that just has like a group of
what are you
friends that
talking
like
about?
I hang out and talk
Blaine,
with? In this?
Blaine when Blaine walks into a room, he leaves a wake of a trail of blood wherever he goes.
Well, mostly because he walks
Both
into that
emotional
room
and
to take slashes at
physical.
you. But
He's pulling the knives out everywhere he goes.
yeah, I don't know. I understand the whole I don't like audiophiles. They're crotchety uh people with
Smelly.
weird takes.
Well, there's a lot of harumph, you know.
There is, but like there's also a lot of just chill people who like music and
Well, and that's why
Okay,
I have to echo. We should
wait,
all
wait,
endeavor
wait,
to be
wait,
more like
wait,
Mark
wait,
Ryan.
wait.
correct.
I know the people you're talking about. I defy you to list 4 chill people from the group of people you are talking about.
Okay, Mark Ryan.
First of all, wait, are you talking to me or Andrew?
You, I'm talking to you.
Okay.
I would say
What group
Jamie,
do you think I'm
Mark Ryan.
talking about?
The ones who have the fucking Can Jam house and stuff.
Oh, I mean, I can name more than 4. Do you really want me to name more than 4?
Yeah, I actually want because I don't
Okay.
think I'll agree.
Do you
Okay.
not think Kyle is a chill person?
No.
I would say
Okay, then we fundamentally disagree.
Yeah, you don't know Kyle.
Okay, I am in Kyle's wedding party.
Yeah. I've known Kyle for 10 years. Kyle is not chill.
he's more chill now.
He is more chill
Okay.
now.
Kyle is very chill. But
Kyle
I will
is
say
a
what
sweetheart,
happens
but
is
he's
when
not
they're in
chill.
audio, it's a little bit different. They are opinionated. I would never say they're not chill though.
Yeah. And
Like
even
I know
beyond
if I
that
wanted to
particular
not
group,
talk about audio with
there are
Kyle and we instead
who
just talked
are.
about something completely different, it would be
Yeah.
a chill conversation.
Okay, but there's a difference between being able to have a chill conversation and being a chill person.
I think Kyle's a pretty chill person.
And I tire of this conversation. What's the next spicy take? Related to the current topic, the specific words of audio reviews are mostly unimportant. It boils down to how positive / negative the overall tone is, and the words are like supporting footnotes. This is true, but I hate it because I am sufficiently dead inside to where there is no tone typically. So for good products, people are like, "Oh, he hates it," and I'm like, "But it's fine. I just said it's fine. It's good." But I think that's true. I think there is a tendency for viewers to index more for the tone of the report than what's contained in the report itself.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I don't like it either, but it is a thing that you just have to kind of deal with
Yeah.
to some degree. I mean, I personally do put some more thought into the specific words used to describe specific things, but
Well,
you
the
can
issue
also
is,
watch it.
yeah, like the issue is more that like I don't like being forced to. I hate the hype machine stuff, right? But that is the thing that people are more engaging with, and I
Okay,
don't want to
wait. So
force
you know
myself
how we were
to
going to do
be.
FOTM audio or whatever it was? The
Yeah,
hype machine should be a product.
yeah. Anyways, you get the point. I don't like changing. I don't like, changing myself to fit into what people are most likely going to engage with, because like my natural disposition is just like not that. Anyway, any other spicy takes, guys? We have 10 minutes left. DMS will release a $50 TWS with impeccable tuning. It'd be great if you could. On Sound Point, instead of FIO Go XLR, Motu just needs to start making M1.
An M1.
In
No, the
don't think
Scarlett
so either.
Solo has existed for years. It's not.
Yeah,
it doesn't
like-
appeal to audiophiles. Or
Well, I mean,
gamers.
I don't think
Gamers.
that's the issue. The Motu M2 is already pretty affordable. Going down to one mic input wouldn't change. Look at the difference in price between the 2 versus 1 input Focusrite one. When you're just looking at the cost of like one ADC basically in a slightly wider PCB, all the other costs are the more significant thing. Hence why it goes down by like 10% or something.
Also,
but
most
also going back to
ADCs
the
are
Go
stereo
XLR point,
these days.
the Go XLR thing showed us that isn't what the gamers are wanting. The gamers are wanting the sliders and RGB and the voice effects and all these silly things, which they decided to do. They sold hundreds of thousands of them, and then everyone else looked at it and went, "Damn, they did well with that. I guess we'll just ignore that then." And they just did nothing. Like,
I'll pretend I didn't see that.
Yes, exactly.
Jelly Bites says, "I want more retractable cables."
No.
Okay, what do you want them to retract into?
Himself.
Do you want them to retract into the headphones?
Themselves. They want the.
I feel like this is a spicy take, but I can't find my alignment with it. Like,
I need more information to understand this.
I am
Okay,
using one
Jelly
right
Bites
now.
everything
That
like
is not
that
more
with a
information. Jelly Bites.
retractable
What
cable
does it
has
retract
died.
into? What is retracted into what?
Okay, so I had one pair of headphones where it didn't go like in the headphones, but like halfway along there was a spring-loaded rotating thing. So like you'd have the cable and you go click, and it would zzz, like that. So it was just a little thing hanging off the edge.
That seems
so something
reasonable.
like that maybe. But
Okay, it sounds like that's what Jelly Bites has. I mean, okay, here's my problem with that. On a headphone, that's weight. I don't want weight here, you know?
Yeah,
I mean,
like,
the problem I have with it is just that it's a failure point in everything I've ever had, be it a vacuum cleaner or a headphone or anything else with a retractable cable. The retractable cable mechanism has been the first thing to fail, usually within a frustratingly short period of time. But especially if it's a headphone which you're going to be using multiple times a day and doing that multiple times a day, it's going to break really fast.
By the way,
I mean,
Jack, the really we're not doing news and impressions today because we want to cut it a bit shorter. So, and
yeah, we
also
only got
there is
7 minutes left.
There also
no
wasn't
news
really
impressions.
much news this week anyway. So.
There was the LTT drama, but like that's like every week now apparently.
I also don't care about that and know nothing about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So
I care only to the tiniest extent about that, and it's basically just because I'm disappointed.
Capra says more coiled cables, please.
Okay, well
No.
that take goes directly to hell.
Directly in the trash.
Directly. Jesus.
Less
Super
frequency
says
response and measurement talk and more news and impressions, please. We got to get stuff. We gotta send us stuff if you want
make
impressions.
make news.
Yeah, or make news.
Super says stating your music genre preferences and asking for headphone recommendations is a useless noob trap. So you mean like
This
I
take
like
is Sub-Zero.
Yeah. So you mean like when people are like, I like music genre X, what are good headphones for X?
I like heavy metal. What good headphone? $150.
Yes, it is a new trap, but I also
POF21.
understand why people have that assumption.
Well, it's honestly an older meme at this point. I feel like the concept of genre-specific headphones was a very big meme in like the
Heavies.
aughts. Well, but I feel like it's going downhill. Like, I feel like that used to be a very big meme in the same way that sound signature has decreased in significance in the discourse these days.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like that's like a dying meme. I feel like
one day I'm gonna make a headphone that actually is good for heavy metal, and you'll see that genre specific headphones can be done.
Okay, but first you'll have to listen to some real heavy metal.
Yeah, we'll get there. Rob Hawk says the people are mostly made of wax. It is the products that truly come to life. This is a good take.
Insightful.
Yeah.
Thank
Does
you, Rob.
porcupine tree count as metal?
No.
No, it does not. No, I do listen to some metal though. Like I would consider
I
Nail
feel
to
like
the
we know you
Stars
listen
be
to metal.
Yeah.
I think Blaine was taking the piss.
I like
Well, I'm saying it's not
Catatonia.
real metal.
Catatonia is real metal. Come on. Like, in what world is Catatonia not real metal? Strapping young
The best
lad.
part about metal is that I can just say, "Is blank real metal?" and I can Google it, and I will find 10,000 pages of people who ardently are arguing that any given band is not real metal.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
can
it's the same
definitely
with
do
punk.
that.
Oris says that the best headphones for heavy metal are the tungsten, at least until someone makes osmium headphones. That's a good take.
No,
fair point.
I actually think that the issue is largely that so like I don't know what the tuning of the heavies is now, but when I heard it, it was specifically the opposite of what I would want metal to sound like. I don't know if that tracks for everybody, but certainly for me, it was like,
Do they
nope,
still have
this
the
sounds.
like front-firing tweeter things?
Yeah,
I don't
They had,
know,
they're
like,
not
dual
they're not giving
front-firing
up.
But they
on that,
were-
I don't think.
They had way too much ear gain. I was like, who wants their metal to sound like this? I don't understand that. But
People
maybe
who
they've
like
changed it
guitar.
since. What's that?
People who like guitar.
Yeah, but it's not just about liking. I mean, that made it so that the guitar was very piercing and harsh, right?
It should be harsh. Metal should be harsh.
But you can also have it sound pleasant. Okay, well, one day, I will make a headphone for metal. We'll see. We'll see what people actually prefer.
I have a spicy
Oris.
take that Hobby Talk seemed to like, which is
Okay.
U-shaped tunings are just V-shapes that the person making the assessment feels good about.
Yeah, I mean, U-shaped
Like-
is just a way of saying this is more neutral, which basically means this is more good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think U-shape should go out the window, and W-shape should come inside for a drink.
Okay,
Is
you
Gojira
made it
metal?
weird. You made it weird.
Let me see. Is Gojira metal? I have to ask AI.
I feel like Gojira is
Listen.
metal.
Yeah.
I mean, it depends on whether you're asking a metal fan or not. If you're
I feel like
asking
it's
a
like
metal
tech
fan
metal,
and they
right?
don't like
You
Gojira,
like metal.
Tech metal,
like-
black metal.
It's not
well,
black.
yeah, but
God, it's definitely not black metal.
So again, this is just the thing with metal. Any given band is in the superposition of being metal or not based on whether the person you're talking to likes it.
Okay, I just asked AI. AI says answer. Yes, Gojira is a metal band. We have the answer.
Wow,
It's
you
so
just did
good
what
range
like
of
some of the most
really
cringe
abstract
people
metal.
I've ever encountered in my life do.
Yes.
Aphex
Yeah, I
Twin
know.
is just e-metal. It's electrified metal.
If you think about it, isn't it all metal at the core? Anyway,
No.
Horace says
Is
there's
Beethoven
no
metal?
reason. Beethoven is pretty metal.
Pretty metal, I would say. Very
Beethoven
metal.
is one of the most metal of
And
the
that's
classical
why
composers.
Beethoven is excellent.
He's not my favorite. I will say
Who's
I
your
think
favorite?
that
Brahms?
I do like Brahms. I mean, like, honestly, God, that's a whole last conversation. Let's not do that in the last minute. Oris says there's no reason headphone cables should be thicker and heavier than IEM cable given the same length. Good take.
Very good take.
I don't think that the public would accept it though, and that's sad.
I
Good-
care
good
a lot
value.
less about the weight or size of the cable versus how it actually fit. Like, I would much rather have a slightly thicker cable that does the like nice, soft, just drop and stay where it is, versus a thin, rubbery shape memory cable.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. Minimal
Yeah.
memory, maximum flexibility. It's the only way
Yes.
to go.
Good value for money is just a nice way of saying I wouldn't buy this, but maybe you should. I can think of scenarios where I would say this is good value, and I would buy this. It's
Well,
if you're
yeah, that's
using it
that's
as a
an
caveat.
obvious.
Yeah, if you're using it as a caveat or like a footnote.
I do kind of see where this take is coming from. I do think good value for money, but I don't like this is unfortunately the reality that a lot of reviewers end up encountering. Like if you're me
Well,
and you have a fairly particular taste about some aspects of the sound quality, you're gonna encounter things
Yeah.
where you don't like
can
it at
recognize-
all.
yeah.
But for someone who does want that kind of thing, it's a good value.
especially in
But-
IEMs, you could say, oh yeah, like there's so many like cheap Harman tuned IEMs these days. Where you say if you want that, this is good value for money.
Yeah.
I mean,
I
I
don't
don't
know.
know. I feel it doesn't have to be, right? Like I can say
Yeah.
this is good value for money. Like I mean, I said that about the NTH 100 and I bought that, right? So I don't think that's always the case, but I do think that there is a kernel of truthiness here. Like I think
Mhm.
that this is something that people do quite frequently as a
They do lean on it.
yeah, I wouldn't get this, but you might like it. It's good
Well,
value.
that
It's
part is
providing a
definitely
lot
true.
for what it
Yeah,
costs.
you get a lot of things in the box. All right, Headphone has a subform dedicated to cables and power, but not one for pad swaps and ear tips. Think about it. Yeah, that.
Really, really makes you think, Mar.
Okay, the thing is, I don't know that they need to
We
have.
live in a society.
I mean,
I don't
in
know that they need to have a
fairness,
specific subform for that. It's just that the other subform is stupid. Like that's what
though, like, wouldn't you have the discussion about pad swaps on the forum
that's
thread
what I'm
for that
saying.
headphone?
That's what I'm
Whereas,
saying.
yeah,
Yeah.
Zantanai says GoldenSound's chairs clipping in and out of the
now it's
blur, and
gone.
I'm going
Now
insane.
it's back. Now it's gone. Now it's back. Now it's
On
gone.
that note, we should probably endeavor to end. Oh, there's one more. Analyzing sound quality kills a big part of music enjoyment. It's only when you let it go that you start to enjoy the music. I feel like there's a song
So
about this.
I agree and disagree.
yeah,
If
because like
going back to
there
what
are
we said
times
earlier,
when, regardless of you trying to do it, the sound quality will negatively impact your
Happens all the time. All
listening.
the time. And
So
you're
Yeah.
like, I
it's not a
can't.
voluntary thing. It's
I
not
have
something you can
encountered
just turn
products.
off.
I was going to say this in one of the. It was the Bayer Dynamic True Wireless that they sent, which I haven't reviewed yet, but probably should. But my thought process is like, this makes me actively not want to listen to my music, and I feel like it's a bad product when you don't when like its sole function is to produce sound, and it's so bad that it makes you not want to listen to music.
I mean, I think I totally understand the people that are like, I just want to enjoy the music. This stuff isn't fun for me. Stop taking the fun out of it. But
Okay, so I have the
don't go
take.
watching that stuff. Like, we're not saying that you have to watch a video about measurements or anything. But also, it's not an excuse or justification for like really bad stuff. Similar
Well, I
to
mean,
what
the
I think
main
we
thing
talked
is,
about on last stream.
if you don't want to talk about it, why are you talking about it? Like, if you don't want to talk about headphones,
Yeah.
nobody
Yeah,
is
what?
forcing you to be in the
No,
community
but they do want to
Discord.
talk about headphones. They just don't want to engage with the analysis side of it. This is what I was saying before. They still want to
Well, then
talk
they can
about.
just not.
I know.
Yeah, like
There needs to be. They need to go to the subforum that has like the this is
The
gonna
hug
sound mean.
box.
Yeah, that has basically the soft corners, the child protective corners.
to put it bluntly, I'm guessing that this spicy take isn't like actually what you think, and it's more just a sort of there are people that think this, but you are currently 3 hours in to a stream where it's probably the most nerdy subject focused audio stream. The mistake wasn't that either we or you are wrong. It was that if you hold that opinion, why are you watching this for 3 hours? Just don't watch it. And
Okay,
that's fine. That's totally okay.
we do have to end. There is one really good one here. I'm sorry, I'm skipping over another one, a couple that I see there, but this one's really interesting. Sennheiser's internal tuning target would make Harman irrelevant if made public. Now, I
don't think we
disagree.
have evidence for that.
We
It's
don't.
an interesting
on their
contention.
product.
I like stuff like this because it's like we do know that like just from speaking to other manufacturers that they are they do have their own market research they're doing that they're doing and they're hitting or trying to they have their own internal things that aren't public. But I was going to say this person I hope means this in the sense of things like, for example, the development of the HD800 and HD100S or HD600. And I feel like what we know from that is that those are not necessarily based on like separate or specific, internal targets that they may have had that they could have made public. I don't know this for sure. This is totally conjecture. But if you look at the way that those are designed and what they were going for, what their design goals were, it's not that out of keeping with what science has said is good in headphone design from Hammershøi and Mahler and all the other stuff that has existed before that. It's only when you get to some of the really weird stuff where it's like, okay, where was the science that led them to that? And I'm like, I have no idea.
I don't know. I think this is an interesting question. Honestly, I think that this is something that I would like to talk about possibly as a full topic next week, because I kind of think that the idea of tuning targets, basically, I kind of want to trial run something I'm thinking of doing in NYC, actually.
Okay.
I'm basically sort of thinking about a concept for maybe actually we'll do it in the after party. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I have a concept for a new talk about how people don't understand targets.
Well, and on that, I think we should probably wrap it up here and move to the after party. So again, thanks for everyone for tuning in here on YouTube to the Headphone Show's Noise Floor. But we're going to be moving to Discord now. So if you're not a member of the Discord server, go ahead and click the Discord link below. We have it as go.headphones.com/Discord. You could just do discord.gg/headphones as well. And we have a stage set up there, and we'll pop out of here and then pop into there in 5 minutes or so.
I'm gonna go to sleep, but
Fair
you guys
enough.
do that.
You
Sounds
get some
fun.
very
rest.
tired.
It's a weekend. You're
Yeah.
tired. As always, we've been brought to you by headphones.com, your number one place to learn about and buy audio equipment, headphones, speakers, DACs, amps, cables, and probably other things that I'm forgetting. All right, IEMs. People were mentioning that. Pretty much everything is covered by a 365-day, pretty much no questions asked return policy. Obviously, we're asking where do you send it back from, and did you break it? But outside of the reasonable, you're going to be able to get a replacement or a partial refund, so you can buy with confidence that you will be able to get something that you will be happy with in the end. This channel is not profitable in any way, shape, or form, so ultimately the store does pay for pretty much everything. So I strongly encourage people to consider it for your next purchase if you like what we're doing here. In addition to this show, we have written reviews and content at the audio files accessible on headphones.com. And in addition to the Discord that was mentioned, we have our forum, which is forum.headphones.com. We'd very much encourage people to join it.
Lots of measurements there, and good discussion has been going on. Hey, are we a nonprofit? Could we?
No.
Probably not. Even though we're not profitable.
At one point, I talked to Angela some more about. He made some comment about doing a fucking, what was it, like 501c or something. 503c, I don't know. It's like the not for a public benefit corporation. And I was like, bro, that's a lot. I
Yeah.
don't think we want to go down that route.
There was a scenario where we technically would have qualified for potential grant funding for research that we were looking into that at one point, but it never happened, never materialized. But maybe something in the future. Anyway, that is it for the stream. Join us on the stage. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.